The heroes infiltrated the world, making him succumb to despair. People fought to their last encouragement to protect the place they called home. Among those brave souls was the protagonist of this story, Carcelian, Leandian, who fought the threat with a relentless ferocity. Many years have passed, and he was still fighting monsters relentlessly, stacking corpses with the only sword he had, and without a hint of fear in the heart at last. The day came when he fought against the brother of another mother of Aaron. That bastard was hard to defeat. The battle was brutal, but eventually, I would like to put an end to that piece of paradise. After the battle, he also succumbed to death. But fate had other plans. With his soul floating in an endless void, met a human boy from a planet called Earth. The boy's name was Dojin, who was on the edge of death for an unknown reason. Before death, I wanted to make a simple request to Banyan, who immediately refused even before listening to him. After all, the guy just wanted to die in peace. I was fed up with all the misery, lost his country to the Argentines, lost his loved ones, and in the end died like a dog. Although this Dojin boy, I did not really want to live either. I just wanted to, desperately, that his family had a good life. Well, it looks like Banyam is finally ready to hear the boy's wish. The reflection lights up like a child in a candy store and gathers the courage to say that he wants his family to live in peace, so our protagonist accepts gladly the task of protecting to the boy's family and is now on Earth, inhabiting the body of that teenager. Ojin, your mission is to infiltrate the Namsun Gate. Classified as a rank if for obvious reasons. Entry to registered properties is only allowed for this reason. The automatic machine keeps requiring you to scan your identification card, which obviously does not have, then simply breaks into the building, guarded and authorized to enter the door. The security alarm that alerts on infiltration, once inside, begins to walk looking for ropes to crush. That is when he encounters a group of strangers, persons with licenses, officers, and permission to be there. Assume that our main character is lost and they offer to show him the way out, especially because they are also heading for the exit. Dojin remains silent by broadcasting a strange vibe that even Asians notice. Wears casual clothes and does not look like a toy at all. Clear. Nowadays porters dress more relaxed. But our main character's attire is too simple. And what is up with that backpack on your back? For what they know, it is probably just a clueless carrier, which was abandoned by the group with which he arrived. Yet they are not entirely sure. Finally, Dojin speaks out, recognizing why they feel so skeptical. But he makes it clear that he got there on his own, without any group of heroes. When one of the boys hears this, he sighs, understanding the reason behind his presence. Has seen many cases of people becoming with being and hunting flies after seeing TV commercials. Spectacular. But that outburst of motivation can kill you if you walk into the doors without going through legal procedures. First, you need officially certify as a citizen, then train and test. Not to mention that this door is made of rank C for a reason. If you are a beginner in your career, you better find a range door F before losing one's real life. After listening to the guy talking nonstop and handing out unsolicited advice, Dohun makes it clear that he does not need sermons. Naturally, the group of boys is perplexed for the cold way in which this guy responds to them. After all, they were just trying to help. So they get a little angry, but the leader tells his teammates to calm down. If the boy does not want to help, let the leader leave him. Is convinced that this boy will eventually learn the hard way, because they should not be. Cover your ears when someone wise is speaking. Hope you discover how ruthless these doors can be. Very other than television programs that glorify to be humble as if it were the Second Avenue of Christ. And so finally, Dojin runs into a huge troll staring at him, ready to devour it. I live on Tuesday. Launches an attack but misses and hits the ground. Guy moved so fast that the troll, he could not even process what the hell had happened. Then closes his fist and throws a devastating blow, so hard that it bursts the face of the orc with one punch. Now that failure is out of the way, the good part of looting dad is coming. First, take the sword that guy was carrying on him. Then use that same sword to finish inside the corpse's body and extracts. The shining stone is a low-quality magic stone, so insignificant that Dohuni bothered to pick them up in his past life. But since it is now in ruins, it has no choice but to. Suddenly more flies invade The area furious after seeing his decapitated partner. Dohoney turns around and throws the magic stone so fast that it bursts the head of one of them. The other two fools throw themselves to the attack as if they had a suicidal desire, and Doken is more than happy to deliver while wreaking havoc. We move back to the group of heroes that crosses this fly-infested territory today. Their minds continue thinking about the encounter they had with this young man. The red-haired woman is truly concerned about Dojin's well-being, fearing he will end up dead, but the group leader assures him that this is unlikely. If he really is a guy, is not he authorized to enter the door? Agents at the control center will soon find you. These agents on missions are always of rank B or higher, and since this gate is of rank C, there is no way he will die here as long as I do not run crazy to my shoulders. The bald man agrees with the leader's opinion, is pretty sure that the brat Diamond must be with fear, waiting for the agents to save his body of the good disaster. History is the opposite. It is our main character, the one who is playing, making these sandbags. Jumbo's eyes tremble with fear. One blow and the dam falls is so fast that they can't even touch it, much less crush him with the weight of his weapons. Appears just behind one of the fools and throws at him a kick so hard it destroys his head. With all the angels on the ground, grabs one of his swords and proceeds to collect the sweets, magic stones for him alone. After a while, finishes filling his backpack and is ready to go. Although honestly, is quite disappointed with what he collected today. Basically has weight dead in the bag with all those low-grade gems. Just at that moment, one of the agents finally sees him and calls his colleagues. Before our prota can turn around completely, those guys in suits give him a stern look. First they explain which are part of the door control center and suggest that it show your baggage registration card, if not registered, must accompany them to the center. Our main character is not very convinced, which makes the guy in the suit even more tense. That he is getting colder and insists that understand and follow appropriate procedures. The only response received by the types is an expression of sadness marked on the face of Dojin. With all this unnecessary drama ruining his chest, yet the guy has no energy to argue. Simply turns around to leave. How words do not work. Types threaten to handcuff them and refuses to cooperate. They even say they will use physical force, if necessary. One of the most impatient dares to grab his hand and threatens him with the wounds he will suffer if it does not cooperate. To top it off, tells him that all responsibility will be his, so it is best to solve everything with words, and not with violence. It seems that Dojin is fed up with so much chatter. So grab the guy's hand, and warns him to stop getting in the way like a thorn. On its way, this chilling warning frightens. Instinctively, the guy in the suit who feels a chill run down his back. The other two guys pull out their magic batons. They are actually grade 4 magic sticks. Sufficiently powerful enough to subdue an orc. But they are not strong enough to hurt physically to our main character. Then Dojin shakes the guy's hand with so much aggressiveness that it does, moaning like the grumbling coward who is. Then issues a final warning. They would better get out of here if you do not want to lose the last one pinch of dignity they have left. Finally, the agents, bound by duty, attempt to resort to violence, do their best to hit our prota with the magic sticks. But none of them manages to reach it. Our prota throws a blow, wrecking right behind the back of one of the guys. Then hits another in the shoulder. Then focuses on the guy with glasses. The last standing, the last subject, feels what is coming and gets tense. Dojin vanishes by disappearing into thin air, which makes the guy panicked at the sight of a man playing. Then vanishing out of nowhere appears a punch. Stealthy, straight to the stomach that makes the guy roll back. Staggering in pain, it seems that Dojin has had enough of all the persecution and of the agents who harass him, so finally is beginning to consider registering as an angel. After all that, people assure him that while avoid murky or illegal things, no people will be hunting it. Doken then asks why they call crack. A question that leaves one completely disconcerted. People a little context on how it works. This world, there are multiple passages connecting with another world where strange heroes live. These passages are scattered all over the planet. The magic gems, extracted from the bodies of the heroes, are used as new energy sources, which makes them highly coveted. For this reason, the Argentine government these tickets in order to have total control over each one of them. All passageways controlled by the government and open to the mirrors is called door. Tickets that are neither controlled nor closed are known as cracks. Returning to our prota, it seems to him, ridiculously, that these guys in suits follow him everywhere, accusing him of assault, no matter which door I pass through. The poor agent explains that if a boy enters a door without permission, the control center is notified automatically and agents are sent immediately. Since our prota is thinking of entering a crack, the agent makes it clear that you are not as easy to access as the doors enter. To a crack without permission results in severe punishment, without warnings or agreements. Dojo is not interested in hearing any of that, so grab the poor guy by the face and throws it to one side as if it were a garbage bag. At this point the poor agent regrets not calling the headquarters. This is too big for his salary. Before leaving, Dohun takes one last look at the people lying there. Thinking about how weak that guy is, the weakling appears to have a fractured arm and is busy shouting threats, promising to catch R and put him in jail. The scene changes to the gas complex and Seoul Digital in the Gwangshin district. This huge building is now known as the Toy Complex. All transactions are carried out here, related to stones, mirrors or anything found on the doors. And today this place is busier than ever. Adhun can be seen heading to one of the stores that is dedicated to the purchase of and sale of magic stones. Upon entering is greeted by a guy from Generation Z, busy watching Instagram reels that seem to melt brains when Dojin says he wants to sell some magic stones. The cunning store owner immediately begins to show off of your business, saying that this branch offers the best prices in the country, including goes so far as to claim that they are the best in the nation. Dojin finally puts all the low-quality gems, bloodstains from on the counter, which makes the owner of the store make a disgusted face, is visibly disgusted for all the blood stuck to the stones, but still does not complain and proceeds with the transaction. Offer you an aduhun coffee while processing the stones. A while later, is drinking his coffee while the owner cleans carefully the blood of the gems. Then the owner calculates the total amount. There are 12 low-quality magic stones, 16 medium quality, plus 5 of superior and inferior quality. After deducting a 40% commission, Dojo is for receiving approximately 5.5 million wons from our company. Protagon is very comfortable, delivering 40 for 100 as commission. It simply seems unfair to him since he did all the housework and wasted his time. So he does not understand why this guy believes he deserves almost half of the money. The store owner with pride says he is being prosecuted, charging only 40 for 100, especially because all your sponsors charge 45% or more. Is so confident that he even tells Dojin, who can take away his stones if you do not like the price. After all, no one else will offer you more, or at least that is what this guy claims. Our Pratanos falls into that trap and begins to put away his valuable stones back in the backpack. Seeing that your tricks do not work, the guy grabs Dohun's hand before he leaves and demands compensation for the appraisal and the coffee he drank. 30,000 won for appraisal plus 10,000 won for coffee, not to mention all the blood he had to clean, which ruined her face towel with all that added up. Dohun allegedly owes the guy about 350,000 won. Dojin will not give in to these ridiculous demands. No matter how much that crazy guy insists that nothing works, the guy goes down to the level of a bully street and threatens Dojin with class toys I know, whose bodyguard is. Just at that moment, those big boys break in through the back door, asking why they were called, if someone is causing problems, are ready to order. Dojin in response takes a sharp look at the guy, who looks back at him with the same intensity. A while goes by and the scene cuts to the face, sweaty and terrified, of the store owner, who used to act as if he were the protagonist, but received a good dose of reality when Dojin defeated his 3 pigs without even sweating, making it clear who the real protagonist is. Our prota then approaches the counter and negotiates quietly the commission, lowering it to 1% without anyone saying a word. We all know it is not an argument when someone like Dojin looks you straight to the soul, so the deal closes and Dojin comes out with a good bundle of bills for all the loot he achieved with his sweat, or rather, with their fists. His grandmother and sister remain completely at the amount of money I receive it. Pa even suspects that Dojin is cheating with counterfeit bills, but he quickly clarifies the situation, saying that the money came to lend cash to a friend who started a business, and it did very well. The grandmother is not sure if her grandson does not even have such a friend. He tries to convince her with another lie, who was a childhood friend. Eventually, The teacher stops asking questions, at least the important ones. Mientras tanto, Do-hun's sister is super proud of her older brother for making the family rich. The loving brother caresses her and gives her hope about a life of luxury who will live from now on. The girl simply jumps in joy for being rich. To see her so happy, Dojin realizes that it is actually moving forward with fulfilling a promise that he once made. Remember the words of the original owner of the body who now possesses, whose last wish before he dies was that his grandfather and his half-sister named Junior live safe and happy lives. That poor boy disappeared just before Dojin could say something, and when he woke up, had already become Dojin by now. Its only mission is to ensure that this small family lives safely and comfortably. That is why he wants to buy the safest house in Korea, which currently won 110 billion won for him. Making money will not be a problem as long as you recover its original strength. This world shares many similarities with the one who came, the one that was destroyed. The only big difference is that the cracks, doors and mirrors here are all barriers, weaker than those in the world that once saw fall. For him who in his previous life had the title of God of the Sword, this place is nothing more than a sandbox until now, has only been fighting with 1% of its original power. Suddenly they play the door and the visitor says he wants to see Dojin. The guy gets up and decides to open. In doing so, he finds two thugs waiting outside. These guys are here to collect a debt. Do-hun allegedly owes an absurd 48 million. You won when you saw this. Do-hun is sure that these are lenders, the same to whom the real Do-hun asked for money before leaving this world forever. Although originally were only 5 million wons. For your nurse's hospital bills, these types of are being charged ridiculous interest, and now they are demanding 10 times more than they know. He has been making money lately thanks to the doors, so they want me to pay, as everything is documented in the contract. But the only form of payment these guys receive is a punch in the face of the big guy who bursts at him. The jaw. That one blow blows the poor bully into the air, called his partner, with the jaw hanging from our scare. Prota then casts a lethal glance at the wimpy to remind him that they have already been paid more than 9 million wons. So if you do the math, these guys should be paying interest to him. With another punch that makes the guy cry like he threatens her. What is Dojo? Tells you to let him know to his boss that he will go to pay him a visit himself. The scene changes to a shopping mall full of life, where we see the sweet little girl, Union, illuminated with emotion in a stuffed animal store. Dojin took her there for a shopping session. Today he has total freedom to take whatever he wants, and our banana was always so soft-hearted, or who his past life were the memories of the Dojin original, those who revitalized their dull emotions. To see it well that Dojin was treating Junior, even if I was just his half-sister, warmed his heart. So he wants to do the same. Give as much love as I can to this little girl. The girl finally choose a stuffed animal you really want. A small but adorable bunny. Chooses it with modesty, making sure not to look extravagant. But Dojin gives him a much bigger one. Does not want it to be contained for nothing. It is your day and you can choose what you want, without worrying about money. Both also indulge in good food. While enjoying the food, an unknown voice calls our main character by its name. Is a middle-aged woman, accompanied by a group of bodyguards. This chubby girl looks like another speaker he loves. Our main character first criticizes his bad sense of fashion, then questions the girl sitting next to him. Has ready to launch a hint, insinuating that he got pregnant. Someone, and that girl is his daughter, just as his mother brought him into this world. Of course, these verbal stab wounds infuriate our Prota beyond all. Mientras tanto, the little one has no idea who this lady is, nor why does he talk so much crap so casually. This girl changes, quickly pays attention to the girl and asks her name. The girl introduces herself as Lee Jr. What makes this smile happen? Realizes that she is Dojin's sister. Out of habit, woman launches a comment about her clothes as well, calling it a disaster. The snake is not forgiving, nor the child's deceased mother. And all this is filling the patience of our main character. But for some reason it is being contained, without being provoked. Even this woman seems surprised that Dojin. Keep your composure and do not fall into your traps. So this witch decides to go one step further. This fat, pathetic has the nerve to ask a little girl, what does the word harlot mean? That was the limit. She bursts and flames it, an ugly woman belonging to a tribe of orcs. Of course, the woman gawks speechless, completely baffled. A little context to understand why Dojin has been putting up with this woman until now. It turns out that Dojin was born an illegitimate son and lived in poverty. At the tender age of 7 years old, his mother died, and as soon as he managed to get to his father's house, with his father married to a new woman, was rejected by all. The things got worse when the wife of her father gave birth to a son, and Doken was completely ignored. The situation became so bad, who kicked him out of the house where he lived, and he ended up living with her half-sister in her grandmother's house. While reflecting, feels compassion for the original Dojin, that he had to endure all that and still tried to, smiling as if nothing hurts, but now wants to change everything. It seems that this woman is his half-sister, which explains why he was trying to resist, but he will no longer tolerate it. Remember how he shared roof with this orc woman, and is still as disgusting as ever. Not only has a personality, rotten, and a smile worthy of a failure, is also stupidly ignorant. Crushes even more his spirit by throwing brutal truths at him, that it is a disaster, with an inferiority complex so large that it projects their insecurities about others by calling them ugly, is just a gold digger with other people's lives. And that is the truth that the world should know. While continuing to crush it with his comments, sharp, the entire mall observes them as if they were the main show. The orc woman is completely upset and about to lose control. But then, Dohun's stepmother enters. Seeing his mother, the orc woman approaches her like the weeper, pathetic that is, complaining about how this boy verbally humiliated her. But his mother shows herself annoyed to see her complaining like that and shuts her up with a cold look. I will not lie, the guy has a stepmom to fear. At first I even thought that the woman, ogre, was his stepmother. This elegant woman turns her attention to our and greets him with the utmost grace, inviting him to come home and have a good time. But Dojin knows very well that all this wisdom of kindness is pure falsehood. After all, it was she who caused him the most misery and uneasiness during the 12 years he lived with them. The woman keeps reminding him of things he would prefer bury forever by his post-traumatic stress and making him go into seriously total with a cooler tone than your mother's jokes. Our prota tells this snake to go away. That is a direct blow to their dignity. Being insulted by someone younger than her simply turns on his heels and leaves with the little dignity that he had left with the truth. I did not expect him to respond so directly. He stays, wondering if it is the same guy he used to be, bowing his head even when she was giving him slap for no reason. Her silly daughter follows her, as well as the bodyguards that accompany both. Honestly, those guys were like mannequins in this whole scene. Let us change the attention of our main character. It seems that these two completely ruined the moment that he and Junior were having, so he decided to leave as well. The way he reacted to his family was completely intentional. I wanted to make something clear. The Dojin that I could not even raise my voice no longer exists. It is time for his disgusting family to get the point. Then the scene changes to a Mercedes at full speed on the road. Inside the car are the dead mother and her daughter. The daughter is furious with her mother for having gone in silence instead of having put Dojin in its place, while unburdening his frustration and cursing our for the humiliation they suffered. The mother orders her assistant to explain why Dojin is still alive. The bald guy has no idea how this guy keep breathing does not fit with the reports. The woman screams at the top of her lungs for the stupid things this man is saying. How the hell could he be alive? If they made sure that the work was done and clean, the poor guy assures him that he will reinvestigate the matter and that this time it will be in charge of, that the job is done well. Mientras tanto, the daughter has no idea of the plans shady that his mother has been plotting all this time, stays in shock to finally hear about murders and deaths. The mother throws him an unexpected question. Wants to know if your daughter has feelings for Dojin. That takes the fat fool completely off guard, who blushes and gets nervous. In reality, is concerned about the possibility that Dojin die, because if the parent finds out, they're going to get into a very serious mess. The mother grabs him, the mouth strongly, and orders him to stay out of his business. The woman is completely determined to end Dojin's life, with no intention whatsoever of forgiving him, especially after how he dared to confront her. Eliminating him is the best revenge he can think of. A decade ago, the world gave a twist to the chaos with the appearance of the crack, that terrifying dimension that gave origin TOS emerging from the portal. With the sole purpose of killing humans at the sight of them, their terror did not stop, was constant, and eventually the world. 30 cities destroyed and on fire. However, just as the dark forces appeared as well, the light emerged in the form of warriors, brave, known as savages, With its arrival, the stones of mana were discovered for the first time. Extracted from the corpses of defeated heroes. Back to the present Dohun. Goes somewhere while reflecting about how magic stones changed rapidly the world's energy dependence. Because of their key role in the countries, decided to focus their attention on the cracks, emerging countries basically claiming priority over them in extracting resources. With the current state of the world on the move, all its industrialization depends on, completely, of the concept of doors and the existence of the Asians, and that is why this profession is highly lucrative. A high and consistent salary is only achieved becoming a real hero. Doken has arrived at his destination, and it turns out to be the establishment, Yonhongo Capital's headquarters. Yes, it is a long name, but soon we will see why it is there. Upon entering the building, realizes that the boss and his henchmen look like bullies, common that attempt to scaring people with their ugly faces. But Dojin takes it quite calmly. The boss turns off his chest and signals the Avar Prota. Not only beat up his bullies, but also dares to appear at the door. That shows that Dojin, he really does not give a shit. No one with cunning. Tells the owner of the organization that in reality, it was Dojin himself who ended up losing. This statement seems ridiculous to the boss. So he seeks clarification on what he means. Clear dog, who has come to receive the compensation he deserves, as he has suffered mental loss, physical and material, during all this time because of these clowns. With firm and serious words, the boss notes a significant change in the boy's personality. Something in it has changed, is no longer the spirit, nor the quiet person who used to be. There is also the fact that this same boy destroyed the lackey who was sent to the door. With all this in mind, the boss's main suspicion is that Dohun must have had some kind of unique awakening during their experiences at the door. Even knowing this, the guy continues to actly and tells Dojin that this new confidence, because of his awakening, it will be his undoing. The hypocrite accuses him of having I need confidence in their abilities, and to back up his words he calls to a group of types, badly faced to intimidate him. Of course, can bring as much brute force as you want. But for someone with the experience of the god of the sword, are practically insects. The boss talks, stating that even the awakened end up being Asians, like in lower class Asians. The funniest thing is that the guy assumes that dojo is nothing more than a D class, and that its organization can easily crush someone this weak. Mientras tanto, Doken is quietly sitting on the sofa in the background, while 5 guys watch him without him showing not a shred of fun. Orders the boss to sit down again. The boss is astonished to hear it, continue to speak in the same tone while Dojin emphasizes, with a serious face, that he has not yet finished talking. When one of the guys hears this, he decides to play the brave and challenge Dojin. In a fun way, our prota takes off his glasses, which generates even more confusion, and then launches a special direct attack on his face. The guy flies away due to the impact, while his friends are speechless. But that is not all, because the beating is shared by all. Dojin knocks down another while calmly continues to explain his point of view and reveals your knowledge of business. Shady boss behind the disappearance of a company of Dojin money loans. Aims to beat up a red-haired thug and demonstrates, learn about its network of false identities after hit your shot. Tells the boss that he is looking for an identity of ability to officially register and earn money. Dodging the attack of the last type, Dojin strikes back with triple strength, and thus manages to put the whole group to sleep with his special sleeping routine technique. Working 100% of the time, Doken continues with his demands, saying he needs identification, infallible, that will not cause problems in the future. The boss is stunned for what just happened in a matter of seconds. Or will remember that you only have 1 day to forgery your identity. Some of the men did not even intervene in the fight, which is a compliment to these NPCs, because they are the type who would defy God by being a level 1 rookie in any story. The boss is completely baffled. Calculate the skill level of Dogun, at least looks like B class B in strength. Is so lost in his thoughts that the boy has to remind him to return to reality. Finally accepts the job. Dojin takes the kindly, but with an intimidating expression on his face, and asks him if Hanaju, his stepmother, ordered an attack against him. Of course, that is practically a fact, as evidenced by the conversation that she previously had with his daughter and assistant. The boss is speechless until Dojo squeezes his grip so tightly that the guy screams in pain. Even his henchmen look helplessly unable to help his boss by the way. They should also change their hairdresser at last. Boss breaks down and reveals his heinous strategy. This cruel and manipulative woman wanted squeeze every penny out of the bill. Do-hun banking. Bringing it to such a level of financial instability that did not have another way out than to take one's own life to escape this situation. Those were his orders. Ojin. Listen to this, and after enough supplication and weeping sets the man free, asking him if he also, that was one of the reasons by which he was locked inside the door. The boss turns into an innocent guy instantly, stating that he had nothing to do with that incident. Even reveals that he would not have been paid if Do-hun died inside the door, which is likely to is a valid reason for not having done so. That already leaves Do-hun pensitives. The name Kong Woo that results be the guy who walked him to the door in the first place. In essence, Do-kun wants to know every last detail about that subject by tomorrow. With his two clear demands, he leaves with courtesy, completely changing the atmosphere of the site with respect to how it entered. After that conversation, Do-hun is once again in a state of deep reflection. The real Do-hun had only one wish: protect his little sister and his beloved grandmother, no matter what. With all that has happened, this only adds another layer of misery and shows the kind of life that this poor boy had to endure, being completely defenseless but nothing to worry about, because the god of the sword is ready to do what is necessary to put things in their place. The next day, guess what? Our prota is already registered officially and was also assigned a rank B, which is convenient, unlike other stories, where the protagonist has to start with the lowest range only for aesthetics. When passing the card through the machine, demonstrates the accuracy of its identity because the system recognizes it, although it warns him that his rank is still inferior to that of the dangerous mission that is about to accept. This is quite for him, who thinks that perhaps should have bothered the fool more in charge of assigning ranges to give it a higher one to avoid these problems, despite the repeated warnings from the system not to enter in a door well above its level. A Do who does not give a shit and walks in anyway. Let us talk about the details of the door of the Night Island. Actually, is a door of rank B, but that does not mean that a hunter of rank B can occur in it. It is always recommended that interpreters have at least one class higher than the door for greater mission safety. Anyway, the dungeon scale is considered to be in range D, which means that it is widespread and will be difficult to hunt alone. The good thing, however, is that it is composed of tunnels, so to some extent, it won't be that hard for him this time. By the dungeon scale, recommended a rank legislator to take on the task of. But the words risk and danger do not exist in our main character's dictionary. At worst, would have to face a whole fleet of savages in a narrow tunnel with almost no space. Do-kun smiles at his first opponent, a giant snake with a chaotic purple aura. For most Argentines, this would be a sign of terror, but for him it is a sign of good luck. Prepares with his gauntlet to start the battle. When, by the way, the snake is accompanied by several friends, whose languages are reminiscent of the Alien movie, try to attack with everything they have. But it is painful, because our prota is a killing machine, so effective that it traps and collects the stones of mana, as if monsters never existed. The Black Killer Viper is a kind of monster, known for its hyperactive paralyzing cell that can take down anyone with the slightest contact. With that in mind, Do-jin launches himself as a projectile at a speed of bullet and throws a blow with all his strength. In a matter of seconds, is about to cut the creature all over the body, blood splattering everywhere, until it finally splits the Atlantic in half. With the defeated creature, Dojo, note your equipment. The gloves he bought are preventing the believer from coming into contact with him or her, and for the price of 300,000 are fulfilling their function. Returning to the Do-hun hut, turns his attention to 4 other of those horrible lizards without reflexes and begins to their heads. With his brutal speed, more and more blood oozing, until the vipers are sent to the afterlife. Do-jin stays there, busy looking for a bunch of magic stones, digging among the flesh of strangers. But to their disappointment, there is no stone of mana in sight. This makes sense, since according to the rules of the previous world, or from the original world, these heroes only have one smile, 3% of releasing stones from mana, which means that it would have to hunt at least hundreds of them to obtain good booty. While still walking, discovers the bone-headed gentleman. You would think he is the boss, but Do-hun has another opinion. Asks the giant snake if it is the monster. Boss, as if I really would respond as a good friend. At the end of the dohun, thinks it is a good thing that this big guy has appeared. Because then he no longer has to worry about getting lost, full of decision. Launches an attack to finish the battle quickly and return home. But then something unexpected happens. Despite having managed to launch a brutal blow, his punch has no effect on the creature. Only left a tattoo on his head. While in the air and unable to dodge, the creature whips him against the wall with his tail. Dojin falls after crash landing, which probably gave him a real bath. On the strength of the chief engineer, the creature pulls out its poisonous fangs and, Isia like an average girlfriend when she is hungry, tries to bite him, but luckily, Dojin manages to the attempt. Using the impulse of its evasive, it is launched again on the attack with a powerful punch that connects against the corpse's body and leaves more cracks in his hard armor. After this second Dojin attack, realizes something. The boss has an unusually strong exterior, which makes it a challenge. Much larger than the others, Vipers that eliminated the armor is so strong that at its level, cannot penetrate it with a single blow. This changes the situation and makes you question whether it should change combat strategy. With its original strength, the god of the sword would have the floor with this beast. But then notice the sword of the warrior who lost his life fighting against this boss, and now they will understand why he is called the god of the sword, and not the god of the fist, although the weapon is extremely worn out by the fight takes it, in the belief that a sword is only as competent as its bearer. With that knowledge in mind and the leaf in his hand, walks towards the monstrous snake. The creature launches itself with everything to attack it again, exploding at incredible speed, but Dokkan responds, rising above the, while proudly declaring that the creature should feel honored that he is going to kill her using a sword. Despite the fact that the condition of the weapon is a piece of crap, this guy throws so many brilliant cuts in so many few seconds left by the body of the snake, completely shattered the fight. Serious ends in a conclusion, funny with the snake dying in the background while our main character's sword is reduced to dust. Luckily he finished it while there was still some integrity left in it, with the dead boss Dohan. As a smart idea that is not very often seen in other protagonists, pulls out one of the creature's fangs. Believing that I could be a good material for forging a sword, short with a little. Considering this as a reward for their trip, exits the door. For when it does, it is already night and the sky is starry and has passed more time in the range B gate than I thought. And with the way things ended, only motivated him more to regain his strength completely. Is also a little happy that his old friends did not saw in this weak version of himself, because it would be embarrassing after the hunt heads to appraise and sell the metal stones he obtained. Just in front of him is another monster that has come to present its great cache of magic stones. The stingy receptionist treats him as governor and tells him that the commission is 40%. As well as everyone else, even an innocent guy, how he can notice the deception behind that rate, exaggeratedly high. The city council points this out directly, expressing their concerns and clarifying that it is just a normal guy. The receptionist, as he did with Dojin, clarifies that its tariff is in fact the lowest among all appraisal centers. The door center charges 0.5 per 100, but that is tax-free. From the perspective of the swindling appraiser, this is a great offer for the messages that allow them to earn good money. Give them cash to the rescue who does not complain too much except for asking a question. Comments on the receptionist's disfigured face. The funny thing is that the guy continues to recite the same script, even after being beaten up. Disguises him by saying that a psychopath first destroyed his guards and then left him in that state. The boy believes it is really his fault of the receptionist for having low-ranking guards, taking care of the site, especially since this is a level site C. After all, rank is not everything in your world. Skill also plays a huge role in rank. Is in fact a misrepresentation of someone's abilities, and is only updated to keep the system running. The chest is sufficiently wise enough to mention that among people of the same rank, there is a wide variation in skills and abilities, so they cannot all be treated equally. Also points out the difference between a guard, bored to feel all day in the store, and a lunch, who actively goes hunting beasts to make a living. Although this guy is giving him good advice, the receptionist clown, he just wants me to stop talking and take the piss, which he does, offering to help the little one. If you ever need anything. Just as we left the main character passes by him with the same coldness as always. At the sight of him, the receptionist shudders immediately and panics as he points out, shouting that this is the psychopath who left it done. a disaster when turning to see them. The Argentinian is quite impressed. The slim physique of our main character is noticeable in relation to its height, but the fact that he defeated the guards, here it puts it on alert, wondering if he is the troublemaker. What I like about this guy is that he is not offended by, actually believes that Dojin is abusing his powers as civil privacy response. In his normal life, of course, this could not be further from the truth, as it only knows a part of the story. But it is still interesting to see realistic characters. The receptionist is enjoying the show, knowing that this guy is a hero, veteran with 7 years of experience. If something were to happen to you here, you have enough connections to ruin Dojin's life just by giving your name, without really caring about who he is. Our prota simply turns around and tells the old man to get out of here. This provokes the prestigious veteran, since suddenly it seems that Dohun, yes, he is being a fool. Dohun asks him if he is looking to take revenge on him. When he heard those words, Suicide feels provoked. But being the hero, responsible that he is, and with all the experience he has, knows it is a terrible idea to fight other Colombians, since this almost always ends in deaths. In fact, the death rate in duels between us is higher than in fights against. Remembering that fact, the guy just calms down, turns around and leaves, leaving for the receptionist. Without words, Dojin turns to the profiteering appraiser and asks him, "Do you have a problem you want to solve?" Before he can respond, he throws you a bag full of magic stones for you to taste them and convert them into money. These jewels are all high-quality metal stones, which raises the question of who heck is this guy really? From the receptionist's perspective, when making the calculations, the total amounts to 150 million. One at first glance seems like a lot, but for Dohun is too little for a single day of hunting. As for the money, but the receptionist reminds him that the commission must first be calculated, which obviously provokes a chilling look from our main character. Remembering that in his small deal, agreed only 0.1 times 100, Ojin calms down and tells him to give him the rest of the money now. Inside the mind of the funny appraiser, he just wants to break her face because she has so much affection, but that only happens in your imagination. Talking about it, the receptionist tells him that such a high amount needs management approval. Without losing another second, Dojin Lo requires that you obtain approval at the very moment. So the guy quickly calls his boss, whispering the details of the situation to him. But before I can close the deal calmly, Dojin snatches the phone and tells him directly to the boss, who rushes through the payment. The boss accepts, but he just wants to be returned the phone to the Dojin employee, gladly returns it to you, but, or rather, intentionally, star it against the wall. The employee is left shivering at the sight of his device destroyed, while Dojin orders him to prepare the money immediately, now that everything is clear. And this is how the receptionist ended up preparing several bags full of cash to complete the transaction. In the end, the guy was devastated by having been forced in such a way. Maybe some feel sorry for him, but remember that he has a great time swindling strangers, keeping almost half of what they earn, risking their lives, is a bastard. 10 minutes passed and the boss arrived furiously at the store, wondering why his employee did not answer the telephone. The funniest thing is that the receptionist throws the towel immediately and resigns. Right there, the boss sees the phone done pieces against the wall, which already gives you a good idea of what happened. Seeing that, he pulls out his own phone and calls Juan, asking him to come immediately. Julian turns out to be being a young with beautiful pink hair. Purple is so recognizable that people celebrate it in public under the name of Yunwan and treat her like a. Not to mention that she looks amazing in that outfit. Arrives at the store and leaves the receptionist gawking at his presence, greeting him with a charming smile. There is a big reason why everyone does so much fuss with her. Is the fourth-ranking heroine of the country, no less than impressive. Rumors circulate that she is the boss's niece, but that makes them wonder what he is doing here. Confirming these rumors, Juliana expresses, who was called by her uncle to deal with a reckless rescue. Intrigued by the situation, the elegant heroine of S rank sits down, ready to hear what is happening. In the following scene, we found our main character, with its absolutely defined body, meditating in the sun. It is true that he has been hunting all day long, and yet the rewards were not at all surprising. With the current situation, is concerned about the future. First and main needs to achieve a level where you can clean range doors. It's on your own. That means it must training to regain its original strength. That is right, friends. Training arc is coming. Dojin's biggest challenge in this life is that unlike in the previous world, the density of mana in this world is very low, which means that even giving its best to absorb mana will take at least 3 years, approach its original strength, and even more so if things get complicated. On the positive side, I could look better. Equipment for battles. But the problem is that even the most terrible team costs hundreds of millions, which would be wasting money. Suddenly a shiver runs through him, back when feeling the presence of someone dangerous. Setting the sight on Union, grabs the girl at full speed and demands that everyone enter the house immediately, and inside it closes the room. While his grandmother asks him with concern, what is happening? The whole structure trembles with a tremendous roar, which makes the darkness jump out and ask with terror if they are having an earthquake. Little Union panics. But the truth is something that only our main character knows about. This is not just an earthquake, it is something else. Dojin perceives the violent and sharp energy on the outside. A crack has just opened in your world, and coincidentally it has manifested itself right above his house. Running to deal with the problem, tells loved ones to stay, as the situation outside is dangerous for them. At full speed short towards the entrance of the crack, where the last thing you hear are the screams of his grandmother and sister calling his name. The scene changes to the Association of Soul Heroes, where its members are placed in immediate alert for the sudden appearance of a crack over the Mapo region. Appeared 63 days after the last emergency. By realizing that the Leon Blanco Guild is the closest to Mapo L, manager orders your staff to contact to the guild immediately and to alert the nearby points to control the situation by inspect closer up the exact location of the crack. Discovers that he appeared just on a residential dwelling. This complicates things even more, because if by chance a civilian enters the crack, is practically doomed to die, and to top it off, the crack will not allow anyone else to enter after that. And if the person inside dies, will a wave of suicides in 10 days that will cause chaos and destruction throughout the region. The wave would be so uncontrollable that it would put it in check. The safety of the entire city of Seoul. The manager has pants by the person who interacted with the crack and learns that Dohan was the one who entered, since he is the resident of that house. As his interpreter said, entered the crack to protect his family. With this information, everyone assumes it is not a mirror, which further complicates the situation, since the odds that a civilian will come back from the crack are practically nil. This leaves all personnel with a sense of total hopelessness, since there is nothing they can do about it. In the next scene we see Dojin's stepmother, completely furious when she learned of her new up. Can't believe what he is hearing. His assistant reports that although it has not yet been registered officially in the String Association, have verified that effectively has awakened as a result of his last experience at a door. This frustrates her because Kanwoo was supposed to finish the work, and instead we will only be able to make our goal stronger. Crazed hits the table with the fist and wonders why the hell I do not understand. Simply kill him as appropriate. The fact that they also charged for a failed execution is another reason for its fury. Shouting at the manager reads his frustration with Kangwoo and sends him a message. Otherwise kill Do-hyun personally. Shall owe you 10 times the amount paid to you. But to his surprise, his assistant reveals that it may not even be necessary to contact this guy, as they have discovered a new crack just above Do-hyun's house. By confirming that it entered the crack, it is clear that he is not going to come out alive. Hanju called to hear that, and with the implication that it will not happen, calms down and for once it seems be calm. Tells the assistant to observe the situation until we have more news. As for our Prota, has just reached the domain of the crack, is a forest, and in fact is the same forest I used to enjoy during your childhood. The Patispa forest is exactly the same, reconstructed to the smallest detail as recalled by. Even the rich amount of mana inside carries the same weight. Following the way smiles by re-encountering the almighty tree of the world. This mana tree emanates in its purest form, is the structure and the core of the stability of the world. In fact, when the old world collapsed, was because this tree was incinerated to the foundations, forever altering the flow of mana. However, in this cracked dimension, the tree is intact, as he remembers it even though he does not know the cause. One thing is for sure, has an opportunity to regain the mana lost by absorbing it from the tree. Meditating under the excellent flow of mana, our Prota is regaining its strength more and more clearly. Spent more than 3 days sitting exactly like this, forgetting to eat, drinking or meeting your basic needs. 10 whole days passed, and all he could do was concentrate on harmonizing your breathing. At the end of the 10th night, the problem came looking for him and ruined his meditation. These looking creatures, alien, are called the bag and have come to burn the tree, as they did in the past. Only this time, our Prota is there to prevent the tragedy from happening again. Creatures set out to attack him while Dohun regrets not having a sword. With water a tribute for easy toys on fire, suggest as they approach, but our Prota is so full of mana that he no longer cares. Not having a gun, he is the gun. And those hands are classified F for everyone. Extending his hand to his shoulders. So much authority with his mana that knocks down just one with that. The second creature is stunned by his ability. Let us explain what happened. What he did is called liberation of mana, and it is not telekinesis exactly. It is a type of burst attack that uses pure mana as a detonation. I have not used that ability in that way, as it had been low in reserves all this time. Anyway, the bag creatures are not finished yet. Counterattack by firing bursts of energy from their mouths. These laser beams pulsators are rapidly heading towards our Prota. That his mana is calmer than ever. Alone is enough to protect you from harm. Advancing towards the creatures, as it ignites with an explosion of mana comets, that has finally protected the world tree, and that it is now ready to have fun for a while, and enjoy the fruits of your training. Those horrible bugs try another energy attack, but our Prota quickly catches two of them and close your mouth tightly, making your own ability explode. Within them, still behind dead bodies, headless made of flames, the bodies, withered of creatures, drop two valuable metal stones for their use. But that was just a couple of it. Doken is enjoying his life, excited to have unlocked something called the Eternal Flame after defeating him, Ly cutting the shoulders, while tearing them apart with a smile. Finally finished having looted a good amount of mana of them. The massacre unilaterally continues until it annihilates them all. Dojin won the lottery. With the amount of stones they are releasing, among them also discovers a small coin or seed that shines in gold. This is called the flame. Eternally picks it up in his hand and with it regains control of more power. By crushing the fragment and releasing its flames, you can see him playing with the flame as if nothing had happened. Under normal circumstances, ideal would be to continue absorbing world tree mana. However, the state of your body has reached its limit. Mana absorption physicist. The second way to do this is to absorb completely the eternal flame, which would alter completely the state of its mana, and I would transform it into mana of fire. And that is precisely what it does, causing your body to begin to produce a wave of Ignia energy intensively. In his previous life he never felt the need to do this, and did not care at all about the eternal flame. But now it is necessary to absorb them completely, and it takes about 10 minutes to process only one, fortunately, has several already collected, so its goal is to absorb as many as possible. The appearance of the crack-hazed public interest reporters are all gathered around the house of our Prota, while agents and association personnel protect it. Bang Hyungo is furious by the arrogance of only one guy who decided to enter prematurely to the crack. We also have our protagonist, but with blue hair. This guy's name is Kim Hyun Woo and sympathizes with the actions of D.O. for wanting to save his sister. But Song Woo does not swallow that explanation at all, accusing our Prota of having entered as a greedy who was not prepared for the consequences. It would have been nice if it had taken life in a normal way, but if it dies inside the crack, that place will become a detonation field, to come out surrounded by piles. And that is the real problem. Hyungo asks Hilma's opinion, and apparently Hilma has told them to simply follow protocol. Hyungu questions the recent appearance of cracks around the world in countries such as the United States, China, Switzerland, Turkey, and the United Kingdom. That is one of the reasons why Hilma is having difficulty handling so many cracks. At the same time, this type of phenomenon does not occur every day. Y sin embargo, some nations, I need the threat, easily, but in South Korea, are furious, because your situation easily could turn into a disaster, because of only one Siango guy is so angry, who wants to hit the guy who entered and is begging for the crack to spit it back. Talking about the huge purple door, 28 days have passed since its first appearance, the same time that Dojo has spent inside now. The Association of Engineers is scared and has already cataloged the threat as a level 1 wave. The identity of Dokuna Uno has been revealed to the world for privacy reasons, but they are calling it simply that ordinary person, while the rest of the world still do not know who Dojin is. the head of the loan organization. Money already starts to connect the tracks quickly, and his assistant confirms the report to verify their involvement. Hyun-woo acts as the president's right-hand man. Wang Chan-Changap has charisma and wants to know the possibilities of D-Dotto. Hun's survival to go out in one piece. Continuing, the assistant is quite sure that an ordinary person has less than a 1% chance of survival. But the mere mention that Dojin be treated as an ordinary person causes a funny smile on Changa's face. That same common subject sent to the hospital several of his men and left them with bandages by weeks. From a global perspective, are greatly underestimated skills of that only civilian who entered the crack. Now Changap is also interested in knowing the ties of survival of someone if it were an awakened individual with powers. For that, his assistant believes it depends on the level of the assassin, and that it is difficult to make an assessment without precise information. Even Changa admits that the combat capability is different from pure survivability, and that inside a crack, that introduces another level of sensitivity. One thing is clear anyway. That guy has not changed the way he is. Changab wants to protect Doem's family, but not for noble reasons. No. This refugee plans sell the organs of their beings, dear ones, in case he does not return, and if he does, they blaming him for the debt of having cared for them. This guy is the personification of a leech. The scene changes to the mesmerizing tree of the world. Here our Prota is going at full speed in its training arc. For its body nows with mana of fire. Does not even know how long it has been, but has been training intensively by absorbing hundreds of fire stones. With this it has acquired so much mana of fire, who can now use it and manipulate it however he wants to. Not to mention that its resistance to the flames has increased as a side effect. Comparing yourself, past with his self, current only with regard to the fire attribute, thinks it has surpassed to its previous version to some extent by mastering this ability. Embraces the world tree and shares an emotional moment with him. Has always helped him in times of need, both in the past and now. That is why Dokkan is grateful for all he has done for him. As for the stones of mana, has created a small bag with vines to keep them all. With the stones collected and guarded, Dojin understands fully who will probably never see the angel tree again, but still waits. May their paths be crossed again if the divine tree is ever in danger, because if that happens, we'll be ready to protect him with his life. That night, Dojin finally goes out into the outside world, emerging from the entire crack. Fortunately, does not feel that anyone is around, suspecting that most of them probably thought they were already dead inside and that a wave of smiles could appear at any time. However, it detects the presence of someone strong, close by. Deciding to follow that energy, rushes to find the source. Shortly thereafter he meets two agents, one angry and the other relaxed. Both Junggu and 11 are also the same as last time. Now understands that these types represent the association, just for their attire, which means that in the unlikely to be caught, things would become quite complicated. To counteract that, forms a ball and launches it into the air with a powerful onslaught. This attack ends up hitting a building, causing a loud explosion by detonating. Junggu and Shang are put on alert maximum as soon as they hear the roar, and realizing that it is fire, decide to go after him. There they discover a group of people, stops in a state of horror. 11 also asks what the hell is happening in the midst of chaos. In the meantime, our Prota is impressed with his fire powers. So far its accuracy is good, so it will be very useful. In memory of his old friend named Tusk, wonders if this magician would be impressed by its current level of fire. After all, Tiger known as the strongest fire wizard on the continent, and shared a good bond. Suddenly the hidden senses of Jae Hyung alert him to look for the crack, which seems to be acting in a strange way, and right before his eyes, disappears in the fog. Both agents run to the site to see what is going on. When they arrive, can't believe that the crack connection with his world no longer exists. As for our protagonist, he simply heads for his next destination, without any problem. The next morning news spreads on the state of the crack that lasted a month in Mapo. It is announced that the crack disappeared 29 days after. Dojo will enter the area, demonstrating that the concerns of the surrounded by a wave of smiles were unfounded. Have no idea on the unexpected disappearance of the crack, and they are currently investigating what happened. Also have problems to deal with the cause of the fire that broke out at the time of recording in a pasture now. This leads most people to believe that Dojin is dead. and that this was simply consequence of their own actions. Without their knowledge, our protag is growing in plain sight, observing people's opinions. While some sympathize with the boy who lost his life, unfortunately, the darkness of the crack is heartbreaking news for our pocket. Is devastated for no longer being able to interact with the world tree. Although it cannot protect the world tree, there is still one more thing you can protect in your life, which takes us back to the capital of the HCS. Inside, the fools are busy celebrating the death of Dojin, believing that they will now be able to easily get rid of the princess and her Changa sister. Is exactly the type of person who squeezes others until they are left with nothing. One of the guys even comments that they should let the little sister grow up to take revenge. As they chat without monitoring what they say, a familiar voice interrupts them and demands to see their boss. The scene cuts right there and we see Changap humming and making your day. Declaration of which Dojin is finally out of the way and dead forever. Your assistant reviews the day's appointments, apparently has the day mostly free. Except for a confrontation with another president. When he heard that, he laughed. Because tonight, we'll be able to enjoy a party at a club, directed by Madame Kong. Is basically a talk. Senseless until it enters the building, and as you climb the stairs, finds his men being thrown like heroes, with blood splattered everywhere. And the cause of everything is someone that he had left our protagonist for dead. Throws it to the ground and tells the creep, Changap, that crawls towards him like a dog. That chilling order makes the president of the company tremble. Our protagonist acts as the real leader of the group and assumes his place in the chair. Then repeat his order to the ignorant Changa, who is still processing the weight of such a humiliating order without wasting time. Moves like a relentless dog as ever. Tojin then orders him to bark, as it deserves to be treated like an animal. Its clear and strong order makes Changap, Jima of humiliation, takes a moment to bark successfully, but our protag is nothing inside it is assured personally to turn it into an animal, forcing him to bark repeatedly, for all to hear. The president is reduced to being less than human, just like the people he treats. Dogun points out that scumbags like him only act obedient on the surface, but they end stabbing you in the back as soon as see the opportunity. Declaring his disgusting name, he tells him with coldness that your life is full of experiences, dealing with second-rate humans like him. Begging and begging for mercy, Changap is willing to serve as a loyal dog, if necessary, but Dojin has already heard enough and slaps him in the face, so strong that it leaves him without air and spitting blood. His assistant observes how the scene unfolds, until his name is mentioned. Dohan calls him and appoints him as the new head of the company, recommending that you stop working under a type of like that, knowing that these guys are more than ready to betray anyone. Dohan orders the assistant to kill Chan with total permission. Of course, it is a task too heavy for a servant, competent as he is, who apologizes and opposes, saying that their leader has many connections. So things would become very ugly if he was named boss instead of Changap in his name. The assistant begs Dojin to forgive him just one more time. However, Dojo does not want to waste time. With simple words in front of them suggests wrap the body of Chan in a barrel and eliminate all evidence, throwing it into the endless ocean. After all, is one of the things these guys are experts at. When he saw that the chief's servants are not willing to obey, our protag takes another approach to them. Dojo, a threat to the entire group, with throwing them all into the crack as fly food if they do not comply with the order. Yes, the mere mention of that leaves Changap reduced to a pathetic disaster. Can't take it anymore, and it does not stop begging for his life, promising that never again will betray and that will always serve under Dojin. This puts our reflection in a small contemplation. Although it could kill Changa right here and get rid of all your problems, there is something that has changed in him in this life. He admits it. Dojin has become softer compared to his self, ruthless about the past. So this time he agrees and offers him his hand. Proceeds to shake the hand of the hero, promising to serve practically from now on. But wait, something is strange. Why his hand is enveloped in burning flames? Yes, even if Dojin has softened, remains relentless, looking him straight into the eyes, reminds you of the scum, that this is their last chance. In fact, Dojin proceeds to tear off his hand completely, reducing it to a charred mass. At the end of the meeting, leaves ignoring the screams. The president's dying, but it leaves them with one last warning: if even one only of them dares to get in the way of his family again, Dojin will personally take care of their deaths. Regarding his new work, are now officially in charge of protecting their families for the rest of their lives. This is how traitors are officially handled. The man known as Doem was just a note at the foot of the existence that disappeared, along with the crack, is actually having dinner at the locals. The government, the association of mayors and all types of media, passed quickly page as if it were news from the day before. All treated the civilian who entered the crack like a dead man. Even if I went out and told the world he was alive, no one would believe him. In addition to appearing after a solo crack mission, it would only bring him headaches and problems. That domesticated dog Han-chan is currently helping you find a new and suitable house to be able to move with peace of mind for the time being. Dojin finally had the opportunity to give his sister something delicious fast food, also informed him of his plan to move to a better neighborhood. And she could not be now. She can go to the kindergarten like children of his age and enter to elementary school next year. When the subject of the school came up, the reflection of the little girl, Junior, changed for the worse. Dojin was alarmed. Is used to slaughterable beasts, but consent to a child is not something she has in her grasp. Was surprised when his sister confessed that other children make fun of her for being orphan. Listen. The anguish of his adorable sister broke his heart. To the good brother, Dojin, if she does not want to hang out with those cruel children, does not have to do so. Those little bastards will receive what they deserve sooner or later to learn that he would no longer have to attending kindergarten just to be annoyed. Junior was excited inside. Dohan is devising a plan to send his little sister to a prestigious private school where no one would dare to belittle her. That night, Dohan discovered that Kim Mushroom had hidden his grandmother and sister in a motel, and while he was trapped inside the crack, that bastard almost broke his back trying to himself. Reasoned that the motel is under the management of his company, so it is safer than any other place. Dojo has no energy to deal with lackeys that night, so simply enters the room and sees his grandmother again. The small Junior threw himself at him with a bear hug, and the princess took his hand with tears falling out of his eyes. Is simply happy to see his grandson back alive. At the beginning, the warrior was stunned, but as he felt the warmth emanating from his family, accepted the love they had for him with a smile. Little Junior has taken a liking to fast food, so they have been eating a lot in that absolutely real place. Today asked him questions on his older brother's work as an engineer. When asked if he liked having an angel as a brother, Junior acknowledged with indifference that he did not. Although it is great that be strong and cool, are also constantly in danger of fighting monsters, scary, sometimes even die. In little Junior, he just wants his brother to live with the princess and with her for a long time. Dojin was so used to bloodshed, meaningless, then having someone concerned about their welfare was a sensation completely new to him. In the cruel world of the past, was the last surviving human, fought monsters and other creatures beyond imagination, and in the process lost many things. Now that it has been given a second chance in a different world, something incredibly valuable has appeared next to him. Feelings I had forgotten have long been beginning to re-emerge in this world. Maybe I can live. Perhaps you can simply lead a quiet life with joy and love. While he felt warm and comforted inside, the Korean Engineers Association was in chaos. Nate, one founder of the String Association of Korea and director of the World Federation of Physicians, has been stressed by the recent crack incident, or rather, for the lack of one. Its best agents have researched the site, but no new information has been found. Feel lost with respect to the state of its territory is something that frustrates the founder. It is not far-fetched to think that a disappearing crack may spontaneously reappear at any time. His assistant tried to agree with his concerns, saying it would have been better if at least a wave of misfortunes would have occurred, so they would not have to deal with unknown variables. El director Tajong interrupts her before she pisses him off more. Although he is concerned about appearances, thinks it is fortunate that no one was hurt. Natty Wong is one of the 100 world's most respected and strongest scientists. Speculated that if he were to run for president, would be chosen with the highest number of votes in history. His words and influence could easily topple national conglomerates if I so wish. Fortunately, their interests do not reside nor in the power of a leader, national, nor in the wealth of a conglomerate. The only thing that matters to him is the safety of his people. In other words, is a real hero, even if it takes time to further research covering The perimeter of the crack. Residents of the nearby area have already accepted, sell their properties to the association, so that should not be a problem. As a form of compensation, wants to offer you more of the market price, buy their homes, is the least they can do after. Because so much discomfort, all reliable sources have transmitted that multiple cracks have occurred in different countries. No matter what you look at it, something must be happening. United States and China have already entered the control stage of their cracks. Among major nations, the United Kingdom faces the biggest problem while reliable and veteran users have been sent to clean up the other cracks. The United Kingdom squadron turned out to be simply useless. Talking about them, the 1-month mission to finally eliminate the UK crack collapsed in a shameful defeat. The wave of cracks of the United Kingdom has officially started. The city and its people continue their day as if nothing had happened. Among the crowd was Dojin mingling with pedestrians. Today its destiny is his favorite store in the toy complex. When he walked through the door, the guy who attended the counter greeted him by instinct, but head at the sight of his face. Every hair on your body gets bristled with terror at the sight of the young man with black hair. Today the manager is in the store, so you won't have to deal with this customer alone. Sadistic. The manager closed quickly the newspaper that read and looked up. His voice was controlled but tinged with anger. This is the guy who has been forcing my employee, submissive to buying low-quality recycled glass. Dohan carelessly took off his backpack and threw it on the floor. It is actually good that the manager is here, so the sale of its magnetic crystals will be faster than the manager expected. Another batch of low-quality glass will spill onto the floor. Is not interested in such low-end businesses. Dojo does not like to be rejected when all he wants is fair trade. The manager, or any business owner in his or her right mind, cannot afford to accept only 1 per 100 commission. It would be better if the young man simply left. Doken stated that refusing to do business with him it would be a huge mistake for Mr. Manager would regret. The manager continued to kick the young man out without even looking. The bag. This is the last warning before everything gets out of control. In response, Dojim kicked the backpack, spilling its contents on the tiles. Being experienced crystal dealers, both the cashier and the manager immediately recognized the properties of these stones. That coarse bag was actually full of snowy crystals, a legendary treasure that money cannot buy. Dohan has a pretty clear idea of how much they are worth, those things. He knows he has premium material in his hands. You will see, the magic glass was used by an guy named Korsaman in the fabrication of bad things one night. A laboratory accident changed the course of his life and the perception of world on that little rock. The magic mirror glass caused Korsaman to awakened as a powerful monster. Since then, glass became an object. Attention for awakenings of arrows and the rise of mana. The source of energy, so incredibly rare, classifies as an ultra-high-end product. As a play of power, Dojin ordered the fools to pack up again his things, and Mr. Manager left quickly changed its tone, haughty and disdainful for a kind one. Even escorted the young man to his seats, VIP, and offered him drinks while his cashier polished glass. Dojin liked to turn situations around. A second was being fired. The next day I was drinking something with ice. First demand, full price with a commission of 0.5%. As soon as the manager showed a sign of resistance, Dojin threatened to cancel the deal. In previous businesses, Dojin had accepted 1 for 100, is now lowering that already ridiculous rate even further, frankly just to annoy the manager. In response, lowered his head and tried to offer the as sincere as she could, but Dojin is fed up with empties. Either accept your tariff or take your business elsewhere. It is as simple as that. At the counter the cashier was cursing Doam inside for being so fucking rude. Seeing that his performance would not be convincing the boy to give it a bigger cut, the manager got serious and gave a long talk on the market and prices of recycled glass. Dojin has no time for eternal speeches. Carried his drink and got up from the seat, which caused the manager to panic. Feeling that the business of his life was slipping out of his hands, the manager offered a 9% commission. Did not work. So it came out 8 times 100. This kept going down. 7%, 6%, and then 5%. At that level your store would have no profit. As the manager sank into despair, Dojin attacked and agreed to settle for 1%, in honor of the deals made inside. The manager wanted to scream and curse the brazen extortionist. I simply could not let go of that product. The following words that came out of the mouth of Dojin almost made the manager urinate with emotion. In addition to the one he brought today, has about 7 more bags of those mirror crystals. That said, the contract was produced and signed quickly. After a few minutes of finalizing the agreement, 67 billion won entered Dojin's bank account. That is equivalent to about $48 million at this rate. His 110 billion won home no longer seems so far away. The problem is that getting more glass, high-quality images through normal portals has been around too long. If it could find a way to travel freely through cracked areas, could collect treasures like a madman. While looking at the screen of his phone, an administrative message was sent to everyone in the country. The wave outbreak in the southern region of the United Kingdom was finally announced to the general public. In the meantime, travel to the United Kingdom has been banned. After reading about a real problem in the real world, Do-hun lost interest in continuing bugging the store manager in the past. Regardless of the country or association involved, perhaps he would have intervened personally to seal the crack. But he is no longer that kind of person. Now has more satisfying issues to address. Tonight the dinner run on Dojin's account, and they are going to eat expensive meat. To Little Union, his mouth was watering, seeing pork and beef with fat veins roasting on the grill, expensive meat and side dishes. Juicy people kept coming to the table. Fight for what they were spending, given the price tag in the menu. The teacher slowed down the pace and responded to her grandson, who was really good. 250,000 once for 100G was quite affordable. D.O. immediately sank his concerns. After making a fortune from the sale of its crystals, they could eat as much as they wanted and it would not even affect your bank account. Junior's first bite made her fall in love with the taste of that luxury meat. June Dojin continued to add more and more to the grill. As the princess looked at the demon with apprehension, had another package with fresh ribs, ribeye of first loin and beef. At this point, the scale was ridiculous. How could 2.5 people eat so much food? Good friendship underestimated the appetite of a protagonist to take away the worries of the little girl. Junior convinced the Mexican woman to try the expensive meat and, able to refuse the offer of his sweet granddaughter, the princess gave a single bite of that luxurious meat, was enough, so that all their concerns would fade away. Then the happy family enjoyed his extravagant dinner full of smiles and laughter, without Dojo not knowing. A young woman who attracted attention had just entered the restaurant. The collars of the other customers almost broke when they saw her pass by. The woman went directly to Dojin and definitely attracted their attention. I just wanted to talk to him for a moment, nothing more, nothing less. Before I could explain why I Dojo the interrupted for daring to interrupt the dinner with his family. If I wanted to tell you something, to come back when I found her food, would have finished. Juno took out his business card, in the hope that the young man would change his tone upon seeing his name. But to their disappointment, Dojin continued to grill and eat meat, completely ignoring it. So the well-known rank slayer that swallowed his pride and waited patiently in the waiting room of the restaurant, with a star like her sitting near ordinary people, naturally became the center of attention. Men and women kept throwing glances at him. The woman who was at the top of heroism is not only fourth in the ranking, National Mechanics Class S, but many would put it among the 10 most beautiful heroines in the world. All civilians around him thought the same thing. Who the hell is making Yunho wait? Ignoring the evident whispers around him, Juan recalled the brief interaction he had just had a few minutes ago. According to what you know, Dojin entered its first crack 2 months ago. Still alive and now is under suspicion of having woken up, it was believed, who had died in the recent Maple Crack incident. But here he is alive and having dinner with his family. Apart from all those details that do not make sense, a single look, sharp young man, was enough to make a rank slayer nervous. This is John. A newly awakened guy cannot reach the rank S in less than 2 months. True. Even oil tycoon Kavmore, who spent his fortune on magic stones, took about 5 months to reach the top. Rationalizing what he felt, Jian assumed that Dohan must have had some kind of special ability, unknown. Finally Dohan, Grandma and Little Junior finished eating with a full stomach and a high chest. Near the exit, one approached to finally having a conversation with pathetic young man. But before I could open my mouth to talk, another group entered the restaurant with an air of superiority. Dojin's eyes were more acute than usual at the sight of the man. This guy with the face of vermin did not expect to see Do-hun alive and kicking after his excursion at one of the deadly gates, the lunatic Kangwoo. In fact, he was amused. Quite a lot of resistance. Dojin cockroach type, even Julian seemed to recognize the troublemaker at a glance. In the middle of the restaurant, tension increased as silence filled the air. Dojin chose to ignore the superficial insults of the type and recognize Julian. Tangu was surprised to see a heroine of rank, the one talking to the cockroach. Do-hun asked him to take care of his family for a moment. All I had to do was to get a cab so that they could go home. It would be more convenient for them to be away while he was collecting an outstanding debt with a mangy dog. Fortunately, Juno was a very reasonable young woman, and only Dojin asked and assured the grandmother and the child that everything would be fine, said goodbye to them with a wave of his hand, although his concern was evident. One stood there uncomfortably as the cab pulled away. As soon as they left the restaurant, a loud slap resounded inside the premises. With their loved ones off stage, Do-hun at last I could stop pretending and slapped the fool in the face. Moved so fast that Kan-woo did not even see the blow coming, only felt the burning in the cheek. Embarrassed by such a humiliating attack, Kan-woo gritted his teeth and charged to counterattack. One of the waiters tried to stop the fight. Fearful that the awakened could destroy the entire restaurant, things got out of control. His reasonable request was met with violence. Irrational, fortunately, was not too injured. Seo-hyun calmly asked to all to leave and clear the room for their safety. Kang-woo was really easy to provoke, a fool, muscular man who did not even know how to insult well. That is why he was punished with another blow to the face. Was completely unsuspecting when he felt the knuckles make contact with his head. Kang-woo was the guy who locked up the dojo, an original on a door, leaving him for dead. Although our protagonist was not the one affected, directly still housed a deep resentment because of his snooty face, and he felt like talking. Kang-woo, the goblin-faced bully, laughed while mentioning how the stepmother, Do-hun's evil, had orchestrated everything. When he saw that he extracted information about this fool was easier than Do-hun thought. Pulled out his phone and pressed the record video button. I just needed a clear confession to make his life much simpler in the future. Once again, Kan-woo felt insulted by his indifferent attitude, gathered power in his fist and attacked with brutal intensity. I wanted to finish the job I did not do before, kill Dojin once and for all. Unfortunately for the big guy, their primitive attacks were unrivaled. For expert Ki Dojin manipulation, received the violent punch with a soft touch and deflected the fist as if it had collided against an elastic and impenetrable barrier. Kang-woo had never normally experienced anything like this before, would only have been step by step to brute force. Now it seemed to face someone far above than his tiny brain could. Suddenly Dojin was shot down, followed the disappearance of his body like a hunter camera with its grip. The sound of fists breaking a skull resounded throughout the restaurant, while the waitress from before tried to desperately dial the police. Before I could press the call button, a mysterious hand took the phone from him. With a bright smile, Yun-won, he assured the waitress that she would take care of everything, so it was not necessary to involve the authorities. The waitress just felt relieved to see a face, reassuring in the midst of its slapping crisis. Scratches and punches were raining down on Kang's body. Woo, without giving it a second to catch my breath. As Julian knows, this call is a rank B. And with that rank, not many people that can leave him so defenseless, based on this Dojin beating, could be classified as A. Even if that were true, the fight still seems too uneven. Before the situation worsened, Juno chose Do-hun carefully to stop for a moment. I was simply satisfied that Kan-woo would die if the beating continued. Deciding to listen to him, released the inert body of the goblin-faced bully on the floor and cleaned his hands. Seeing that there was clearly a vendetta among them, Jian asked the young man how much he knew about Kan-woo. Do-hun may not know all the details, but knows enough about this guy as to seek revenge. Juno warned him that this piece of paradise named Kan-woo is linked to Jumpyo of rank as good. Do-hun already knew this information and did not consider it a problem. Juan had never met anyone before so reckless and unhinged. This guy does not even care for the consequences that could at the hands of a rank S. Junwon explained that Jumpyo is very protective of his delinquent cousin, and this incident at the restaurant will undoubtedly reach the ears of that heavyweight. When that happens, blood will flow. Dojin mocked Wan's concerns. Is the last person who would be frightened by some cocky gentleman of rank. It's more than future problems. Bothers him that Wan knows so much about his life. Now that the goblin-faced thug is out of action, the enmity of Dojin has moved to the nosy face of the face-to-face ranking. The young man also stared at her without but Yunwan was not weak and was not going to give in. Just for an intimidating look, changing the subject, apologized for the visit and stated its purpose. Had simply been sent by her uncle to talk to him after, to learn about the hidden glass bag of. I thought one had sold. Wanted to keep the rest, and was willing to buy every piece, regardless of price. Dohun warned him that it would not be cheap, as he had many valuable relics in storage. She assured him that the resources of an RES, continues, are beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Well, it is not that Dojin objected to selling his goods. Simply had a condition before doing business. Nothing complicated, just a small favor. At least for someone as renowned as Yun Wan. At another point in the city, the clatter of liquor bottles could be heard. Expensive falling to the ground. D.O. Juan's evil stepmother was collapsing after receiving new information about his stepson, that his people were supposedly dead. Was completely sure that the boy had died in the crack. And now it came to him, news from that Dohun had survived as a hardy cockroach. Press F for the bald guy here. Having a boss like her should not be fun at all. You cannot be blamed for the misinformation. Even the association of S had declared Dohun dead. The evil stepmother is not interested in excuses, wants actions to make things worse. Have just received news of Kang's defeat. Wu at the hands of Dojin. At this point it is safe. Assume that Dojin already knows who was really responsible for his attempt of murder on hearing that she might be involved in. Stepmother swallowed saliva in fear, not afraid of Dojin. Is more concerned about the scandal that could break out if your father or husband learns of your dealings. Can cover many things. But if the information reaches the media, the value of the group's shares will plummet. That is why he ordered his people to intercept to the press if the group fails. T and Group W. Cut all advertising deals and contracts. First of all, the police must also be on your. In this sense, the stepmother's men are already moving to cover all fronts. Know that they have at least a little competition, relieved some of the pressure then. The bald director whispered to him that no matter how many cover-ups they made, that was not a real solution to the underlying problem. That said, it appears that the director, bald man, may have a plan to end this headache even. Someone like the stepmother knows well who this rank boy is. Kong, you can be a mess and a disgrace in the world OFS, but everyone knows how close he is to his powerful cousin. Actually, Kong, you is nothing more than a pawn who does all kinds of work, dirty under his cousin's orders. Both are completely deranged. If Kong, you is arrested by the police and torn to pieces by the media, that will not leave the S-ranking hero in good shape. In fact, he is already taking measures to manage this public relations disaster. The evil stepmother made a decision. Wants to meet with Can Jump as soon as possible. Also that dog of Hanshin de HCS. Capital has openly allied itself with the enemy. Is now taking care of Dojin's family, and that is why the stepmother demands to have a prosecutor on the phone within a minute. Those who abandon it must pay full price. The next day, we follow a group of Colombians entering a 3007 Korea Fisher Zone. Of these areas, 5 are being converted into safe doors. The rest can only be explored by flies, affiliated to associations with coordinated schedules. Today Miss Union leads. Personally, a team with its rank IDS has virtually access door to any door. Among the diverse multitude of heroes, equipped with similar weapons and equipment, there was a young man in a worn-out sweatshirt. Juno chose the Clio de Rangua Guild. As a temporary hunting group is very rare to participate in a hunt led by a that is. So they were hanging Juan. Said that he simply wanted to have a little fun and stretch the muscles. But in reality this whole situation had happened just to give the young man following him a clean entrance to the Doken Fisher. Agreed to sell him the rest of his batch of recycled glass at market price. In exchange for being allowed to enter that area, Restricted just wants to make more money. Hunting in higher level areas. And although it is true that the Fisher areas harbor all kinds of treasures, to get into one so difficult just to obtain safe and fearless benefits is crazy. Well, she does not really care. All he wants are those mirrored mirror crystals. After a few minutes through a dark tunnel, the group finally ascended to the other side, to a bright, wooded area. I just got his smile. Jinju began to annoy Juan on the true identity of the young man following him. Juan simply introduced him as someone he knew. But nobody swallowed that answer half-heartedly. Hinjo speculated that he might be the queen's secret boyfriend. Juan, tired of the Juan gossip, gave him a truth and confessed that the young man was there because she owed him a favor. Not every day, a rank hero who owes something to someone else. While the group was immersed in their own conversations, a huge shadow covered the sun from above. All looked up at the sky and saw the beast. As a guild of ranged to Cleo's killers reacted instantly, unsheathed their weapons and took their positions. The first meeting was none other than the dreaded cockatrice. As a looting expert who is, Jian took over and shouted clear in orders. Jingu and Diana in charge of the defense, while Healthy aiming at the legs. But before I could finish assigning roles, a figure was blurred as he passed, at full speed in front of everyone, with a single shocking jump, closed the air distance between him and the flying beast. Dohan completely ignored the plans and went straight into combat. Uno a uno contra él. Cleo's shoulders were dumbfounded. I have never seen someone so reckless. Gathering energy in his fist, Dohan prepared to shed the first blood. Before her charge, the leader of the guild, called Inju, was already stressed by her bad luck. Were coming into the door and they were already running into each other with a troubled opponent. Before the group could organize itself and take positions, Dojin had already dropped his backpack on the floor, while John, he gave orders. He went through the air like a bullet. Was a real beast of speed with a single jump. Neutralized the bird's aerial advantage. In the sky, took control of the field without any problems. His fiery energy was dense and scorching the bird. Giant did not even have the speed, nor reaction time, to block the coming attack. So he had no choice but to be punched. At maximum power, directly at the peak, the bird fell to the ground while the human remained. In heaven was a poetic investment. Dohuna landed in front of the group without having sweated a drop. The cocaine was on the verge of death, with a brand name of its fist on the side of the face. Guild members, Cleo, were stunned by its rank. Support S were witnesses of the brutality of what happened next. Dohan lifted his leg and began to trample on the head of the bird to the point of reducing it to bloody pulp. May look like suicide, but kill a cockatrice requires a lot of strength. With every stomp and kick, the crunch of bones and the of blood terrified. To the group now, Inju had a great smile for knowing who that guy was. Juno did not really know for sure either. All I knew was that Dojin was an incredibly strong human. Well, to call it simply strong is to fall short. Only a few scientists elect can do what he just did. Kill a cockatrice in one fell swoop is not a common feat. Jian downplayed the feat by mentioning his sister, who also belongs to that elite of outstanding mathematicians. Yet, Inju could not get over the fact that they had a murderer playing among them. Saw the whole scene and was impressed from start to finish. One took note of the miraculous power and the young man's decision to, and with grandma, turned to Inju with a sudden change of plans. For now he wants to head downtown with Dojin. Leaving the rest of the group on the margins, approached the young man carefully. That I was already deftly butchering the discovery of the cockatrice to obtain loot. Before I could say anything, he went ahead stating that I would not share rewards with those who did not contribute to the fight. Fortunately, John was not interested in a few magic glasses. Only approached him to propose to go deeper inside the door to a more challenging area at your current level. He accepted the proposal with a smile, ready to hunt and plunder more. Julian knew the structure of that door well, so she would lead Dojin. He just had to keep up with it so as not to get lost. Without warning, it was fired at full speed. His career was a sonic roar in its wake. Dohan watched her calmly, while his figure disappeared on the horizon, then hung his backpack on the balcony, took position and stored energy in the muscles. With the first step, caused an explosion that almost upped the guys from the Cleo Guild. Inju thought that if they ran away it was like a bullet. That man moved like the light itself. Left behind by the two titans, the remaining users looked at their leader, waiting for a new plan. Of course, trying to follow them was completely impossible. Today they had to accept their role as secondary and simple. Don no one was still going on. Being a good door, with many Colombians in the outside world, normal people are, praises as heroes of rank, but against a true rank S, do not even deserve mention. Julian and that man are in a league completely different from the rest of the Clio Guild. Mientras tanto, the race of these two through the forest continued at breakneck speeds. Without much effort, Juan kept up his pace while checking sideways to see if Dohan followed her, as I saw no trace of him. Thought that perhaps he had exceeded in the initial acceleration. Just as I was thinking of slowing down, the Dohan rhythm appeared next to him, asking if they could go a little faster. Julian's concentration broke and he almost stumbled. I have never experienced anything like this before. Someone who could keep up with you in a race, as far as speed is concerned, is in the top 2 in the country. But this list may need to be updated because Dojin was leaving her in the back. A few moments later, he stopped just to make fun of how slow he was, insinuating who was clearly running just to show off. As I ranked her, my breath recovered. Dojin looked to the horizon. In front of them rose a mountain range, colossal, that seemed to touch the sky. When you asked him what he had hidden in that land, Rocky Henface became serious. That place is the crack boss's lair. The Kassirian, this one called Kassirian, is a toy, gigantic, 20 that resembles a draconian Vabern. One does not even want to consider the idea of subduing that beast normally. At least 3 rank angles are required, combat-oriented to have any chance of against Hong Kong. One thing that Dojin knows about the Kassirian is that it has a chance to release a characteristic glass of imaginary degree, a treasure just below the highest possible degree. With such a tempting reward waiting for him, is obviously not going to let her escape. John opposes such a reckless idea. Well then, Dohan is going to fight that dragon guy with or without her. Flea watched him as he sped her up without fear, aiming to climb the mountains to kill the beast. Felt he did not have another option but to follow him into madness. Something dark awaits the couple inside the chief's den. Dojin comes in overflowing, a confidence inconceivable to face a beast that easily gives you problems. Even 3S ranking heroes that shakes up John to the bottom. You know what is even more shocking? When she arrives on site, encounters the same creature, the Kassirian. Snow at his feet. The fight was already over, and she has no idea what the hell happened. Our Prota casually pulls out his knife of the creature's habitat, leaving her speechless. Juan reflects his astonishment. The creature he has just slaughtered is not just any corporate boss. In this sense, speaks of a prominent corpse known as Park Hall, who became famous for hunting heroes such as the Kassirian, although it is of rank S. The first time he went hunting at the Kassirian was cautious enough to carry 30 rank lines, and yet all heroes of rank S were massacred in the attempt. Park Hall was the only known, barely clinging to life at the end of the fight. From that moment on, the type decided to face the same monster again. But this time it was with another rank hero, S, and 100 reinforcements of rank A, practically a small army. The fight was brutal, focused on drilling the wings of the creature to cancel its flight. The Kassirian then was by a shower of attacks from the Argentines. This reminds me to the 100-man debate against a gorilla that has been circulating lately. By the way, I bet on men the result was the same in the fight against the Kassirian. Was defeated. Even so, only a handful of savages survived. The rest were torn in pieces by the fury of the beast. The damages of that day were so serious that Hal's guild had Sweet Life has not yet recovered. 3 years after the event, and yet this type of aspect Average has defeated Kassirian himself without many problems. The funniest thing is that with his constant gaze, he reminds her that he will not receive none of these gems. Beautiful for standing there fighting against the air. The comment may have bothered her, but Julian is more focused on the absurd of the man in front of you. If I had not been there to witness the battle, I would never have believed such a conclusion. The same farmhouse, terrifying, was slaughtered and annihilated in one fell swoop by a single man. As for Dojin, my boy has harvested practically the impressive magic stone of the creature's body. Looks at her and tells her that she no longer cares. Have an escort to guide him. Is fine on its own. Also rejects take the rest of the objects, valuables obtained from the dragon's body, like claws and teeth, showing little or no interest in them. Turns around to reject it bluntly. Attention to rank heroine S. Totally stunned instead. He managed to concentrate his energy on collecting the magic glasses of mirrors. Even goes so far to allow him to keep all these objects, valuable as a form of payment. One look at the creature for a moment and comes to the conclusion that she does not need anything from the beast either. It is already night, and the rest of the group is shocked to see that a single guy managed to collect 3 bags filled with dead stones. Is an incredible vision even for the competent. Points. For your guild to would have obtained the same amount, would have required a minimum of 20 hours. And for the quality of the ingredients, more than 3 days. This raises the question of the big question about the man's identity. And everyone is staring at Juan, who brought it in first place. And yet she seems as confused as they are. In Jian's own words, the master of the Rangwa Guild cannot understand how Dohun was able to defeat Kasirian without any adequate equipment. Only with this achievement does it already position itself at the top of the ranking of Colombians in Korea, unmatched in its possession. Said, our prota is made of another paste. Rangwa's grandfather even thinks he could be the strongest in the world in its level, which leaves her talking about him. A Dogun, exhausted, returns with more bags on him, with only 1 day of hunting, has already collected an impressive amount of materials. At this point the group is beginning to think that no one would believe them if they reported this to the outside world. The almost divine power of Dojin is the very definition of madness, difficult to accept. Speaking of which, they are told explicitly not to mention not a word of what happened today out of that place, something they must finally accept. The impressive heroine of rank that is approaching R and talks to him about several things. From a distance, it looks like they are-ing as if they were a couple. But that is just so in the eyes of their group mates. I guess they are playing to be convinced that this is the spark of a relationship. Also think that he is the only one man in the world who fits well with Julian, especially considering the miraculous strength of both. The curious thing is how the master of the Rangwa Guild quickly realizes that these two are not the perfect match I imagined. Instead, it seems that they are discussing, by the expressions on their faces, can't believe there is a man in the world with the ability to speak to him in that tone, to one of all persons. The shocking thing is how Dojin hands him a bag and leaves in silence, without saying a single word. That makes it even more perplexing to the guild master. As to the condition of the backpacks and their contents, Yancy, to her own words, it turns out that Dojo a team, the possibility of becoming an overnight. If the outside world learns that he killed the landlady, since this represents a problem for him, leaves the responsibility to her. At the hearing of their decision, they are both speechless. But the irony of all this is that the law of demonstration ends, and one begins to feel a smile growing to learn more about this mysterious young man. The girl is in love. In another location, we delve into the story of the famous member of rank that mentioned before. Hal is giving it his all with his punching bag. His assistant is impressed by his training, since it seems to be exploding with rage as mentioned above. He is the master of the Sweet Life Guild. His assistant helps him calm down, reminding him that a little resistance will bring him far away in these difficult times. Even the master of the union agrees with this idea, believing that those who underestimate him will eventually suffer their fury, and it won't be long before all admire your strength as the most powerful guild master. His assistant also mentions Hal's streak hunting Kasirions, which differentiates it from other species. Even says that his name was unknown in the history books as the Argentinian who defeated the Kasirian with the smallest squadron. The funny thing is that this title, Nadia Dohun, will never be able to take it away from her unless Stephen Hawking rises from the cell and opens a hole. The master of the guild shares its enthusiasm with the assistant, talking non-stop about their own achievements, while his guild has been suffering losses important compared to what it was 3 years ago. And yet the only thing that brings a smile to his face is to know that he is the only one capable of defeating to the Kasirian in the best way. Fact that he is backed up by his one-eyed servant. Continuing with the topic of high-ranking heroes, the scene changes to Kanjumpio's office, who is reading a report on the hectic Dojin night, together with Kan Wui, how he annihilated Jumpio's cousin, despite the fact that Chive's intention was to lock it inside the portal and catch it forever. Included an unexpected twist that resulted in an awakening. Also the client who has hired them to do away with Dojin's none other than the executive director, Hanaju, who is basically at the top of the richest people in Korea. It makes no sense for her to point a single person as an objective, at least until Jumpio learns that Dojin is actually his stepson. Although the boy was taken in by the family at the age of 7, at the time the biological child of a child was born, Dojin was expelled from the home. This fact amuses Jumpio, who comments that not even being rich saves you from being kicked out. In discussing payment for the order, learns that they are being offered 3 billion for work, which seems to him to be an insignificant amount. Then there is the fact that Kanwoo was left on the verge of death after her confrontation with Dojin, suffering numerous burns and bruises. The worst thing is that he completely lost his sight and has become a lifelong invalid. This only adds more weight to the brutality of Dojin's actions, to the point that even someone like Junpyo still has to recognize it. Junpyo delights, imagining that he would have secured to cut off his limbs. In addition to crushing his skull at first sight, one might have thought he was better than his cousin. But now it is clear why it is even worse. While discussing, the battle scene mentions that Jian was also there and allegedly helped Dojin. Somehow, this really surprises him, and begins to investigate more about the situation, as he does not understand what is so special about Dojin. Intensively, not even his assistant knows anything specific about the meeting between the two. As the case was closed in furious silence, Junpyo grabs his servant and roars him to do whatever it takes to discover the state of the relationship between Dojin and Hwan, suspecting that they may have formed some kind of agreement. The assistant, completely devastated by the reaction, immediately flees to investigate. Junpyo is lefting a tantrum, destroying things around him, while reflecting that the men of Sun will come looking for him to do the job that his cousin could not complete. At the same time, is more than happy to accept her assignment. After all, is a rich woman with Andrew Tate's level of money, so it won't be a problem for that greedy scoundrel. Now we move on to the scene with our prota, who returns home after the raid. After today's experience, is more than happy to have passed your time in a crack instead of in a suitable home door. Also complicates things because it may have to maintain a romantic relationship with Juan to ensure that you stay low profile. Remembering their conversation, she told him clearly that people would begin to suspect and to ask who killed the landowner. Revealing it would mean inviting many problems. So for now your plan was to store valuable objects, and if he ever wanted to become famous, she could gladly reveal her existence to the world. In response, he threw the bag at her to keep her with everything valuable. That also means that you should look for another method to enter the crack areas, because depending on Jian causes her problems. Yet tonight's dream will be good, as you will be able to rest in a luxurious house that Chan prepared him. But when he put his foot inside, alarmed to see many shoes outside the entrance, which means that unexpected visitors have arrived. Upon entering the room, sees a group of men in suits, and his boss talking to his loved ones about the guy. Looks like another anime version and watches it, stares like in Junior. Runs to greet his brother with joy, while Dojin is baffled by the situation. Finally, Prosecutor Park Chalian is clearly presented and indicates the connection between Dojin and Chansu. Because of his relationship with that subject, Dojin has been placed under immediate emergency arrest for having participated in the money lending organization he leads, the corrupt president of HCS Capital. Yet managed to get the situation to run its course. Dojin surrendered peacefully in the face of this alleged emergency arrest, linked to the usury operation of Chance OP being handcuffed immediately and arrested in an interrogation room, completely empty. From in there, could hear a pompous voice talking on the phone outside. Was the prosecutor who had arrested him, someone who has such a good chance. Okamoto Jun were behaving like good kids. Before bragging, the prosecutor even thanked the interlocutor for being in charge of the arrangements of study of his daughter abroad, but made the mistake to mention the name of the director Han, which Dohun was able to hear thanks to his superhuman ear. Then approaching the detainee, the prosecutor began to justify his role in the law and stating that since childhood, always wanted isolating the periphery from society from citizens. Decent and law-abiding immediately followed. Threw a thick package of documents on the table, bragging about all the information, compromising that he had about Dojin and alleging that the charges of the preliminary investigation would be enough to lock it up for at least a decade. He also assured that they already had enough Chancio's declarations to frame all those involved in the operation. However, Doju did not even bother to react to these barely disguised threats, which frustrated the prosecutor and led him to insult him, then going straight to the point. Dohun coldly, if that smile of Han Sun was behind such a weak legal. The visibly altered prosecutor vehemently denied any relationship, claiming that he had never heard that name before, even though Dojin I already suspected that these corrupt guys had worked with Chansio therefore. He had allowed himself to be arrested to avoid conflicts, but at this rate, things could get considerably worse. However, the prosecutor, trying to impose himself, he proclaimed that his grandfather's team were not easily intimidated, to what Dojin, trying to escape a slight indication of murderous intent, enough to shut him up immediately. The prosecutor almost got all over himself, feeling that penetrating gaze on a primitive level, as a direct threat to its embarrassed existence. For having been frightened in front of a handcuffed detainee, wanted to play brave and slap him in the face, but just before committing that act an intern interrupted him and asked him, leaving the interrogation room, for a moment, had received a report on a significant discrepancy in the Dohun. The mirror detector of the building evaluated it as a person, completely ordinary, and after several verifications, the result remained the same. Considering the recent incidents in which Dojin had been involved, that did not make any sense, so they began to question whether they had not made a mistake in labeling it as an awakened. From the beginning, the entire prosecutor's report came from the group of T. Dijon, Iju, who was supposedly a reliable source. But right now, Dojin was a complete failure. How they could charge someone considered a civilian normal to participate in incidents that involved superhumans? Mientras tanto, Dojin mocked internally of the prosecutor for being so knowing that if I wanted to, could break those flimsy handcuffs and destroy. And that as for the consequences of could always take his and Junior with him to a safer place, perhaps abroad. However, before opting for this brutal solution, Julian, dressed in suit and tie, entered the interrogation room, probably because he learned of the arrest and came to check the situation. When asked why he was in custody, Ojin answered frankly that even he himself did not know, certainly the reason. Although fortunately, Jian advised him not to do anything reckless, since I may be the only person who understands what he is capable of. While the situation was frustrating to use the force at that moment, I would only make things worse, and even though Julian did not wake up that day waiting, engage with the legal system, was absolutely certain that Dojin was innocent of anything he was accused of. So when I saw someone innocent, facing punishment, unwarranted by accusations, false right in front of it, felt obliged to correct this mistake. Julian calculated that this association would soon begin a parallel investigation, which inevitably would reveal false license held by Dojin, and would undoubtedly lead them to investigate also about the recent incident in the Mapo crack. Mientras tanto, Dojin asked him how his family was doing, and she realized that he was treating as a simple princess. However, when the young man looked at her with an intensity indecipherable one, and assured him that he would take charge of to take care of his family on leaving the interrogation room, practically assuming the role of its representative legal, he declared that this debt would not be forgotten. Even if it does not demonstrate it openly, Julian was pleased that this time he was trusting her, promised to resolve this stumble as quickly as possible, and I was not at all. The method Juan chose was not a legal defense direct to prove Dojin's, but chose to expose the various crimes and activities Prosecutor Park's illegal Cho Young, what ended up causing his dismissal. Once that scum has been removed from the road, fair research could develop without obstacles, and it was demonstrated that Dojin was innocent in connection with the loan operation, illegal and other recent incidents. However, they could not completely avoid punishment, as was to be expected. Research confirmed the use of a license to survive, unauthorized, although thanks to Julian's defense, only received parole. Subsequently, as they drove back to Dojin's house, breaking news interrupted the radio. Had appeared in England. A never-seen poison that caused destruction. Described him as a creature similar to a 1.5-meter tall mantis, with compound eyes and a terrifying, jumping ability. Going over in the description, Dohun immediately identified the creature as a Cassian, which caused one almost crashed the car when he heard it. That name. Information on newly discovered properties is strongly protected by the association, and she only knew what was a marriage due to her status as a rank heroiness. It must be understood that Colombians do not receive arbitrary names of any person upon death. Release magic stones that contain not only energy, but also unique information. When analyzing these encoded data, it is possible to learn a lot about including his real name on Earth. Science and technology are currently used for this analysis, But in the destroyed world magic was used, which means that Dokkan knows. To the findings that appear in both worlds knows. Their names and everything there is to know about them as well. Casually let loose that the Kains can be neutralized, easily using red flower ant fluid, which is to humans, but acts as a paralyzing toxin. Extremely powerful for these creatures. Enough to spray them and they will stop wreaking havoc. At that time, one got serious. Every word and Dojin movement only added more mystery to his figure, and no matter how hard he tried to extract information about his true identity, he never gave an answer. Your mind in reality was flying away, devising a plan to avoid future headaches. And the only solution reasonable that he could think of was to kill that grandmother from Han's son. Talking about the devil, the director. Han was on the verge of nervous breakdown, biting her nails and plagued with anxiety while was trying to devise new ways of dealing with the despicable. Her husband's son. The involvement of someone as they were fleeing in the affair only increased the pressure he felt. His assistant was not very helpful. Even after exhausting its resources, could not find out what type of relationship existed between the S-ranking heroine and Dokyun. If they committed a mistake and offended someone of that magnitude, nor all the company's money could protect them. Even more alarming to Hanaho was concerned about the prosecution's report indicating that Dohun had been registered as a normal citizen and not as a hero in detection machines. Based on everything they knew about him, it was evident that he had awakened something dangerous, maybe had some ability to fool the detector of mirrors or something like that. John's son continued to bleed to death financially with this personal crusade of his, and the only thing his team could offer him were mere unfounded speculation. Absolutely furious at last, decided to swallow his pride and contact the in-rank scoundrel, that so-called Jumpio, bringing to the table number 20, but 30 billion in the hope of to put an end once and for all to the problem called Dojin. However, upon receiving the call, the shameless demanded double the pay to take care of this little business, which even to his own subordinates, they found it completely disproportionate, since 60 billion. For a simple job he bordered on the absurd. However, even if he were a low-profile criminal, Jumpio was also a shrewd guy who immediately noticed that Honey Hula had no other options available, no viable alternatives. And considering that your company generates so many income that it would not even be noted that there was no lack of such income, some in the coffers agreed to negotiate on its own terms. Also, with the intervention of Julian in the equation, the risk of confronting another heroine of rank that somehow justified doubling the initial offer. One of his subordinates agreed that Julian was a dangerous opponent, but when he heard that the boy, Jump Ego, was offended by the praise of others in another rank S, so he cursed the subordinated for daring to question their fighting ability in front of someone like Juan. Anley stated that he could take down this guy in about 20 minutes. Obviously, the subordinate had to calm him down immediately, more out of fear than conviction. Changing the subject with a disturbing smile, Jumpio spoke about his friendship with the String Association, as he was also negotiating a deal before flying to the United Kingdom as one of the representatives of South Korea to help with the insect problem. Unfortunately for him, the association was starting to tighten the belt. And also these types had already made public selection process for the deployment of prototypes, practically making it difficult for the rank and refused to be sent. Even though Yankio was a bully, he watched to the association as even worse. The operation would take place in 3 days, and South Korea would send to its best and brighter along with mirrors at least. That would give Jumpio the opportunity of meeting someone named Tekasai at that time. The weakness of the and to be the one to reveal such crucial data would raise the prestige of any to the moon in the eyes of the public. Mientras tanto, the Cashins had extended their advance toward Cambridge. In the United Kingdom, where the Argentines, British were struggling, relentless to stop the relentless, surrounded by these huge creatures, had met a decent team of savages who, while British, used many swords in combat. Yet the brave, front-line combatants, they could barely handle a single Cassian giant that sowed terror among the population of this region. Mantis had such a brutal speed and edge that could kill slow monsters with a single blow. Yet British diplomats managed to enter rhythm and counterattacked with a coordinated offensive. The group had a balanced lineup, and for their skill level, some of them were not despicable at all. used magic to force their way through the bulk of the body, exoskeleton, while others continued with attacks, fast melee. I thought insect blood. Ran through the streets. With good coordination and sufficient power, managed to take down their first Cassian. And just in case that damn thing had a second phase or something similar, Mantis' head was finally cut off. The British heroes achieved a victory. But only one corpse had consumed all your available forces. To completely crush their spirits appeared some Quasianos, more than they took advantage of the exhaustion of the tires. That night, the best brochures the UK could offer perished in a brutal and bloody massacre, gave their best, and they put all their effort into trying to stop the inevitable, but without clear information, were completely defenseless against unknown enemies. The Cajuns were now advancing southward. And resistance, Cambridge railway line had collapsed. Only about 60 kilometers left between insects and the capital London. Just when the Cajuns were about to launch their offensive, final to wipe London off the map, something luminous began to fall from the sky. When the fluid made contact with the insects, everyone came to a standstill and began to experience a searing agony. After a few seconds of resisting the effects, the Cajuns fell one after the other. The paralyzing fluid flowed through their systems and returned. You understand all their terrifying weapons in the face of the force of biological. In the sky, the source of that rain revealed its origin, a helicopter that was still in the distance. From a safe position, to the army of giant mantises on board, were the heroes of South Korea and Japan, sent as joint cavalry. And everyone was surprised that a solution, so simple proposed by one, would have worked so perfectly on the new of the red flower ant, was turning out better than expected. The Cajuns could not resist it and practically became empty and useless shells. Together with Wands was Can Jumpio, who did not believe, not for a second, that woman would have hit the target. By mere then. To remove them from the collective astonishment, Jian took over and ordered everyone to parachute in. To top off the work with a renewed respect and admiration for the principal S-rank heroine from Korea, the cavalry descended like a flock on British soil to prevent a total catastrophe. Days after this joint operation, the whole world learned about what happened in the UK, and whose MVP indisputable. Back in Korea, the media and fans alike crowded the airport, all satisfied to see with their own eyes the pride of the nation. Reporters and their teams were desperate to get an exclusive about one, the best slayer of the entire profession in the United Kingdom, who was the responsible for discovering the weakness of the and lead the operation to its conclusion. Basically successful. Saved an entire nation from falling into despair. It was even said that before returning, she was decorated with for the royal family in gratitude for his hero. When Julian finally set foot at the airport, flashes of cameras and the civilians' cheers, as if it were something I was already quite used to. Behind her came Conjumpio. I need to act like I am not wearing that haircut. So ridiculously poorly done. Although Jian was already a public figure, the intensity of the welcome, that day he surpassed Kang Jonpyo a little on his part, was credited with eliminating the majority of the Cajuns during the restoration. Although it was not mentioned, that basically killed paralyzed and defenseless bugs. His entourage of nurses was composed of about 200 people. And it was thanks to the brilliant performance of the Korean doctors that the United Kingdom still exists today. In the news, all details of the hunt were published, including the weakness of the Kyanos to the red flower ant sage. While walking around the city, our grandfather, Dojin, heard the news and stopped for a moment. Was glad that one would have been able to take advantage of your information, but his humor was ruined when he saw Kan's face jump on the giant screen. That guy with the face of cockiness is another loose end that will have to be solved soon. In an expensive restaurant, Dojin had coffee with the woman of the moment, and Julian, very kind, gave her lots of gifts for little Junior. Friendship, and even for him, warned him not to open anything at that moment, that it would be better to do it at home. But he, ignoring his warning, found among the gifts clothes. Elegant and tasteful. Julian, I just wanted to give you a small gesture of appreciation for that mysterious clue he gave her. Thanks to this information, which for him was produced, she became the most famous heroine in the world. Compared to all that goes with it, a few garments were practically nothing. So he promised Dohan buy him a car or whatever he wanted when he asked for it. The guy basically got a sponsor. She already knew that Dohan would never reveal how he knew about the weakness of the Kasanos but still earned it. As expected, that man was impenetrable, changing the subject. Jian told him about his future plans. I knew he was not the type to talk about world peace or like that, and he was worried that if Dojin decided to go after Hanaju or Kanjumpio, things would get really ugly. For your surprise, Dojin's only immediate plan was to buy a new house, since the place where his family was secured was a rent. I wanted to give them something safer and more their own, while the current star of the heroes and the ancient god of the sword were reconnecting with each other. The other message that stood out during the presidency in the United Kingdom, I was celebrating big time. Kanyankyo enjoyed his welcome party at the pool. Too many girls where you can still look at it. Among all that his mind, I could not stop thinking about one girl in particular. Julian knew she was not that formidable before. Something in her had changed. She found it delicious. That was hiding how he discovered the weakness of these bugs. During the flight back to Korea, Jumpio also tried to provoke her to get information about Dohan, mentioning how Julian appeared just in time to save the day when Dohan got involved with a corrupt prosecutor, and reminded him that he was also present when Conchalga was destroyed. Knowing that he was only looking to provoke her, Julian moves firm and affirmed that it was Chalga's fool who started that fight, since before that meeting had tried to assassinate Dojin and missed Kan's mouth. Jumpio sprained into a demented grave while agreeing with her, also blaming his dumb cousin for letting himself be blinded by a little money. Yet he made it clear that in spite of everything, Chalga remained his dear cousin, and therefore I could always use that link as an excuse to take revenge on that Dojin. For a second, Julian almost let out an emotional reaction while being watched by such a cunning guy. But it was immediately recomposed, disassociated himself from the conflict, and made it clear that he was not in a position to interfere if something were to happen. Kang Jumpio was confused, since it really cost that she was closer to that Dojin. And from that moment on, ignored her for the rest of the flight. Julian, for his part, the mask was applied to sleep over and took a nap again, even though Jumpio could not shake his sensation that she was not being entirely honest. His paranoia about Dojin remained intact and remained on alert. In England, specifically in Lonsdale, the original site where it all began, the vegetation was still showing the destruction caused by the wave of arrows. The Association of German Engineers, with the few resources it had left, the little of his strength that he still had, inside the cracks, to at least secure the metal stones, before a second wave broke out. Some of the guards, stationed outside, commented among themselves how easy it would have been to highlight as true hunters if they had known that the Quasians could be shot down with a little red flower ant sap, if its forces would have managed to block the wave from the beginning, could have collected an unthinkable amount of magic stones. Can be mentioned that once a crack breaks and releases a wave of reflections, can no longer be converted into a stable portal, and for the second wave it is very likely that it will appear a completely different type of creature exist. Abundant records on entire countries that were annihilated during the second wave, darkness being the worst of the enemies. Suddenly the crack palpated. The raid team had barely entered. 5 hours to collect stones, and it was not yet time to extract them yet. Rank guards reinforced surveillance, since civilians, desperate people trying to steal loose stones, are a common spectacle near the cracks. However, instead of following the usual protocol, crack extraction seemed to fall apart completely, and instead of mining equipment, something completely different emerged. His humanoid face was covered with scars, and the armor he wore looked like something out of this world, definitely not a hero. His smile and clothing, they did not even seem realistic. Before the poor guards could contact the headquarters, lost control of their bodies and began to float in the air. The man took only one step and seemed to teleport, raising the guards effortlessly. One of the British guards attempted to counterattack with the United Kingdom's flagship weapon, 3 floating that flew toward their target. But a series of circles of green light made them disappear, as if they never existed. With a hoarse voice, the man complained that these guards were too weak, then clenched his fist, and the green lights began to move. As a result, the guards were cruelly shattered, losing their shoulders one to one. Imagine be converted into a mannequin without arms and legs while on duty. A miasma emanated from his body, dark, with which he exercised mastery over space. using that energy to take the cell phone of one of the guards. By reviewing the current date, calculated that 10 years had passed since the last time he set foot on the ground, and yet its mission had not even reached 20 by 100 lead. After so much effort opening dimensional cracks, it would be time to admit his rejection. No, I thought I just needed increase the concentration of mana to get back on track. But before that, this planet required a thorough cleaning. It was time to eliminate the weak. Back in South Korea, specifically in the region of Pyu, a young man was walking quietly on one of his usual expeditions, completely agricultural, oblivious to what was happening on the other side of the world, carrying only a backpack. Ojin was walking in the restricted area when suddenly their senses were activated by detecting vibrations abnormal on the ground. As anticipated by a battalion of disgusting worm-shaped monsters, emerged anxious to taste some meat. Their bodies were covered with spikes, flies in their fanged mouths. Sharp, however. Dojin remained in the middle of that party, grotesque, completely quiet, without flinch before the ostentatious demonstration of the power of creatures. Instead of looking to them, he focused his attention downward, to the holes left by the worms. Measuring one of them with the look, and calculating that there were about 26 worms to an underground, within a radius of 100 m, with a crooked smile accumulated mana in his hand and pressured to put, testing the bugs, asked how many would be able to survive their first attack. Then fired a burst of concentrated mana directly to the chest, and a disturbing silence filled the atmosphere. After a few seconds of waiting, the expected explosion spread quickly to all the other hiding places, subway in the area, along with the debris and scorching flames. All the worms that twisted up under the ground were forced to come to the surface to avoid being cooked alive. Dohan is one of those who believe working with intelligence instead of brute force, and thanks to this technique, he did not even have to get his elegant clothes dirty while busy to cultivate free wild stones from those disgusting worms. Some meeting importance took place in the city. Minoni, deputy director of the Association of Scientists from Korea, and their boss named Tae-won were discussing a young man who was becoming increasingly difficult to handle. They were evidently talking about Dohan. According to reports, his strength could not even be measured with a standard angle meter, which for other executives of the association, as the magnificent Park Song-chul, was as ridiculous as it was alarming for them. Demanded that Dohan appear before the association. According to information from the deputy director, everything strange surrounding Dohan began with King Kalga's evil plan. After during a crack raid, where he was supposed to die, Dohan changed, and later took revenge and solved for himself only the new crack in Mapo. It is true that he sometimes showed excessive actions, but he always had justifiable reasons. In short, the power of Dohan is classified as an overwhelming force. Tae-won reflected that the wild horses are the most difficult to control, but that as long as they have a good horse in their stable, that is what really matters. What prompted this conversation was Dojin's formal request to obtain an official baggage license, received special privileges for bypass the standard procedure, because he had a guarantor, who was none other than the dear heroine, Julian of rank S of the country. Upon learning of his connection to the Golden Girl, the old men of the association were astonished, knowing that they could not afford to offend her, considering how high his name is at this time. So the Dojin application was approved unhindered and in an accelerated manner was designated as the 8th quality S from South Korea, without even having stepped on only once the headquarters of the association. Thanks to its new status, it could now hunting in any crack area at will, which was not a bad thing, considering that his devastating performance in the Payu crack area, where he burned even ashes to dangerous worms, arrived quickly in the ears of the director of the association. That intimidating old man was quite entertained, seeing that the new rank boy's country was already in compliance with its title. It is not every day you hear on a mirror that enters only a crack second category without union support or allies. In the eyes of ordinary people, that is just crazy. Paradoxically, the same thing responded that he was initially strongly opposed to. Dojin now advocated revealing his identity to the public so that the association could begin to promote its new star. Fortunately, the sub turned off quickly that silly and greedy idea, stating that they should first ask their own if he wanted to lead a life as a public figure. They continues argued that, considering that they are in an era of instability, give the people A new symbol of hope in the form of a smile, range that would relieve the overall tension. Doing everything possible for selling the idea to the Taiwan director, the governor insisted. But the old man preferred to act with caution. Before the association made any decision, wanted to meet the boy face to face. Dojin was still immersed in his of Wormshin. If I was not using mana explosions, resorted to the good old brute force. Every time I cut a poor worm. The rest of the fuckers, writhing and surrounding him, threatening. Although for an average, would be a considerable challenge for Dojo. Their movements were practically telegraphed. Accordingly, with his hand, enhanced by the fiery power of its mana, launched a sweep that burned and eliminated a dozen Colombians. One-shot worm. Then landed back on the ground, and dozens of corpses fell at his feet. Dojo, a guiding being, on the mountain of bodies, as if in an infested cell. His hands were still burning due to the residue of his technique, sighed, and with a slight movement dispelled the last sparks. As expected, the constant consumption of mana, for hunting and eliminating waves of high-level heroes, was therefore on. Finally decided to acquire a suitable weapon. Naturally the best place to get the equipment he needed was the toy complex. Gazon like this, Dohun chose an inconspicuous store and went inside. A guy full of bruises was waiting at the counter, distracted with his cell phone to fight boredom. When the welcome bell rang, did not even lift the view to see who had entered, and simply asked if the customer had an appointment. Doken ignored the bum's question and threw his backpack on the counter, demanding that he forging a weapon with the materials I was carrying inside. Annoyed, the guy stated that no one was being attended to without reservation. It should be noted that Dohun had already been rejected by all other stores in the area, which they claimed to be completely reserved. This was the only one who got his call. Despite this, the bum flatly refused to attend to him. Was clearly screwed up for having to look away from his cell phone then. With patience at the limit, Dojo it by the neck of the shirt, ignoring their threats and curses, asked him directly who the owner of the premises was. The guy spoke with a certain arrogance. That his father was the owner of the business. If that was the case, you might as well call him immediately. Dojin had come specifically by a recommendation of confidence. In the face of this, the young man was released, although he snorted with disdain, cowardly retreated to another room, and succeeded his father shortly thereafter, an old man with a welding mask, modified inside the workshop to see what was going on. His name was Choi Shalan, master craftsman of Armamento Dojin. Explained that he was on Wan's recommendation. Of course, both father and son knew this name. In fact, the whole country knew about him. Old Choi was surprised that a from rank that knew his work. However, Dojin was not there for useless talks. So he simply took the materials out of his backpack. The old master inspected them a while and identified a giant black snake tusk. I have not seen an act in a row in a long time. Dojin expressed that he wanted a sword, decent, made with that material, and to be as long as possible. However, the master craftsman opposed the request. Stretching a non-material in excess could impair its durability. According to him, it would be more efficient to manufacture two medium-sized swords. Listening to this weak proposal, Dohun questioned whether the elderly man was openly admitting who did not have the skills necessary to forge what the customer wanted. In spite of everything, insisted that he did not want two swords but only one. The only thing that mattered to him was the length, plus an absurd size. Demanded that mana's absorption rate was at the highest level. When listening to so many demands that already bordered on the irrational, the lazy could not stay out of it. Proud of his father, defended his ability, saying that he could forge weapons with at least 1 cup of mana absorption grade 3. In response, Dohun took one of the swords displayed at the front of the store, examined it practically, and rated its material as grade 5. Then, without hesitating, he held the edge with his bare hand. Father and son remained silent and in shock. While it's unusual, customer performed what appeared to be a failure. The grip became tighter and tighter until finally, pressure converted the material of grade 5 in rubble, under pure brute force. That product, of which the store was so proud to put it on display, was reduced to nothing more than shark dust and debris. Broken at that time, the lazy thanked his stars for not having messed with the alleged customer. The old man watched in silence as his creations were made. Pieces act followed by D.O. 1. Warn Chochuan. that if they were able to manufacture aluminum from the materials provided, he had better leave work immediately. Because if those hands could turn a grade 5 weapon into fine powder, imagine what they could do to his face. After ensuring a store that could meet your needs, Dojin went without wasting time to another dungeon. On this occasion, its objective was a phenomenon of nature. A creature with green skin and only one eye. Thanks to his mechanical senses, the cycle sinned as soon as he felt a presence hostile nearby, while others, hunters, are concerned for wearing the most colorful equipment. Dojo a house, solo with her pants and hoodie. As he does not yet possess a suitable weapon for the time being, your hands are enough. The Cyclops, without giving it a chance to attack first, tried to crush it from the start. However, when the initial attack missed, the one-eyed guy panicked. Then Dojin jumped into the air for the size difference, and his sword hand moved as fast as lightning, cutting a juicy piece of Cyclops. Pain made the beast squeal with an even more delicate tone. Desperate to counterattack, the Argentinian increases its brute strength and size, gigantic to uproot an entire tree, which shook like a madman, with the intention of crushing the hooded man. However, for his bad luck, such undirected tactics do not work against this man. With absolute calm, Dohun prepared for impact, and as a result, 2 wounds appeared. Deeper and more horrible in each of its reflections was a real massacre under normal conditions. That would mark the end of the hunt if Dohun to face other heroes. But Cyclops are an exception. Regenerative skills, so powerful that they can resist and even mock fatal wounds. However, Dojin had already considered this ability overpowered since before. Therefore, if the enemy has an absurd healing, the only strategy viable is to continue causing damage without rest. So without giving it a chance to regenerate or counterattack, Dojo Atir cut and shattered their way through the tough meat and the grotesque Cyclops skin. To finish it off properly, eliminated it with an attack, amazing and landed like a superhero. Was a victory, clean but brutal on green skin mole. After the fight, Dohun sighed with a slight exhaustion, since for now, keeping a sword from mana for long periods of time is still too demanding and inefficient. Then his backpack and took out a pitcher, which he immersed in one of the wounds. Grotesques it had caused the Cyclops. As if I were just picking juice. That was exactly the goal of today's call. Get some of that valuable Cyclops blood. Then return to the district at sunset. As usual, the bum was still to turn off the counter, so Dojin left his pitcher of blood without a word, instructed Daddy's boy to give it to his father. With this, the 2 black snake tusks could be easily merged. After that brief explanation, refused to provide further details and left the store. All materials, basics for his weapon were already gathered, but if he wanted a higher cup of mana absorption, needed one more ingredient, and that ingredient could only be found in one place on the planet. While planning and plotting a route to find that secret component, his rank partner has received a very important call. "One, I was enjoying a relaxing vacation," when he replied the call and heard the name of a country. The sun, the water was shining, was perfect, but one could not even enjoy completely from his vacation due to that call. After its recent mission in Europe, the Korean Association had decided to send its sent to Brazil, which indicated that the government and the association Brazilian company had already surrendered in its attempt to close the crack zones by themselves. According to Hanyu, Brazilian heroes are especially violent, although in return, the magic stones that they drop when they die have an appearance rate abnormally high. As there was a lot of money at stake, his guild Cleo also planned to participate. For that reason, she asked Jian to accept the mission and out with the friend with whom he had been a few days ago. Inju assumed that the 8th quality S of the country should be that subject with which they entered the dungeon. The same man rumored to be Julian's man. Inju was completely in favor of supporting this love. Nascent seemed to him romantic that 2 supremely powerful people to marry together a fearsome homemade man without anyone else's help. After much insistence, Inju finally got Julian to participate in the mission in Brazil. However, she had no idea if that guy even I would go back to the small store in the toy complex. Meanwhile, they spend. Old Choi observed his own creation with amazement, since he would never have imagined that materials, could melt and combine using Cyclops blood. If it were not for that young man, I would never have learned such a strange technique. Thanks to this, can now manufacture the sword as long as Dohun wants to, could even reach the limit. Top of about 180 centimeters. Dohun wants a two-handed blade with a grip, adjustable for one-handed blows, anything that weighs about 5 kilograms. Old Choi was surprised to see that the boy, yesterday's rude man, now spoke with such courtesy, in fact knows basic manners. Perhaps your weapon is really so important to him. However, old Choi warned him that 5 kilos would be a lot of weight to wield with one hand. It is not like you are going to swing it only once or twice, yet Dojin knows perfectly well what wants to and does not think old Choi to give in to it. Estimated that the forging process would take at least a month and that the mana absorption cup would reach grade 7. However, Dojin was dissatisfied with only one grade 7. That level could not contain its total power, as expected really needs the final impulse of a very specific ingredient. Then Dohun headed for the door and asked the old man to work only for now in shaping it. To the alarm, the improvement of mana absorption could wait until he gathered the rest of the materials. As a craftsman, experienced old Choi had some idea of the material to which the young man was referring and could not help but shudder. A few days later, Dohun returned to the city to meet with a very important woman. One kept his promise and got him a new car. Dohun was very grateful for the gift. She assured him that it was nothing compared with all the help he gave her. After all, it is just a $1 billion car, which is no big deal. When he thanked her with a smile, John behaved like a girl again, shy for a moment while every corner of his new vehicle was inspected. One asked him what had happened with him in the string association. After meeting with senior management, those old angels proposed to make public your information, but Donan demanded a considerable payment if they really wanted to do so. He understood that the president, Taewon, trusts the greater good. But politics complicates everything. Anyway, the negotiation collapsed to its external review. Dohun got into his new car and Jian sat quietly in the passenger seat. While fastening his seatbelt, mentioned the preparations of the association for the imminent operation in Brazil. When he heard her say Brazil, Dohun, everything else, approached her and asked her if she would go. Surprised, they could barely stutter yes if that was the case. He invited her to go together. This proposal made the heroine's heart national will accelerate, while her cheeks blushed uncontrollably. Mientras tanto, another woman also turned red because of D.O. While Lindashi Sun was in the middle of being scammed by Kang Jumpio, who demanded even more money from him, insisted to the Han that he should spare no expense. At a time like that, had already received $3 billion in advance, and yet this man wanted more. Not even had uncovered the alleged work of eliminating Dojin once and for all. Running out of patience, Hanajai began to consider seriously hire another person to do his dirty work. He thought that surely there would be many soulless out there who would kill for a fortune without asking questions. However, Jump laughed at his information and, as a mockery, gave her a free piece of data. Had just learned that Dojin had recently become the new legislator of the rank S of the country practically. Now they are the same. The director, Johnessy, refused to believe that that child, weak and characterless, that she herself had kicked out of the family, would have become some kind of superhuman. John Pio had spent a lot of his own money to obtain this information. If Honi who does not want to believe it, then you just have to wait until Dohun climbs this tower and kills him with their own hands. In the face of despair and fear of reprisals, the director, Han, stopped John Kyo before he left. Was clearly out of his reach, and she did not want to die. This desperate woman promised pay for whatever is necessary in order to get Dojin out of the way. Kang Jumpio smiled and thought he had changed his mind. Instead of asking for more money, now preferred establish an alliance with the conglomerate of the director in the future. At that point, John Hijo would have accepted any type of payment. At that time, Jumpio received a very important text message. It seemed that the heavens were smiling over the lady. The perfect opportunity to eliminate Dojin had just emerged.